Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome your host, Norgoz. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Weekly Warcry Podcast. We have a great show in store for you this evening, and it's my privilege to be your host this evening. I have a great group of guests on. Before we get to that, and before we get to the discussions, of course, allow me to take a moment and to reiterate what this show is all about. So we are episode 5 of the Weekly Warcry Podcast. We've gone over a lot of topics from the community divide to multiple different hero balancing to why Raider needs a stunning tap. That's always a hot topic that seems like it's never going away. And our purpose is dedication to meaningful discussion of community-driven topics, ultimately with the intent to bridge that community divide through valuable knowledge and experiences, which may offer, insight that otherwise may have been overlooked. We want players to think outside the box, to take an objective look at the big picture of For Honor, of the community, and the gameplay. And, of course, there is one thing I want to announce tonight. I want to make this brief, as I don't want to make a distraction from the topics that we're going to be getting to. We are going to be talking about dodging games, removing game modes, hero balance, Gladiator, and trash talk. We are going to be taking questions from the audience. That's going to be towards the end of the show. If you want to submit a question and you're watching live on Twitch right now, type !ask, and the bot will give you a link. And only if one person does that, it'll be ignored. That command will be ignored for the next minute, so you can't spam it, just as a heads up. Go ahead and submit your question through that form, and I'll take a look at that. We'll see about addressing those towards the end of the cast. Before we get to the topics, there's something I do need to announce, and that is that a lot of work goes into this podcast behind the scenes between myself and the guests that I do invite, and it's been brought to my attention that multiple people have restreamed the cast while we're live with commentary, and I understand the desire to do that, but I'm going to humbly ask you guys, please don't do that. It does undermine the work that we all put into this. I hold no ill will against anybody who's done that in the past. The past is the past, and this is not an invitation for anybody to call anyone out or to provoke a witch hunt. Anybody who's saying, oh, well, this person did that, this person did that, that's going to be deleted in chat. That's not to be distracted. Let's not bring a distraction to that, okay? Cool. Now that we got that out of the way, thank you guys for joining us tonight. And I am joined here tonight by the most daddiest of laws, Daddy Law 69. He's a mediocre and toxic streamer, the king of trash talk in the For Honor directory. We have Fatal-Feit, competitive player and in-depth game tester of For Honor, and we have none other than LeninCat, the man, the myth, the competitive legend himself. All of these players have been, all of my guests tonight have been to multiple workshops, and LeninCat himself has also been to was part of the Season 5 Age of Wolves reveal as well. All right, glad to have you guys here. Thank you gentlemen so much for joining me tonight. I'm really glad to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, first we're going to be talking about dodging games. To give you guys a little bit of context, how it affects matchmaking, how it affects the player experience. The context is, you're with some friends, you're in a 4-stack, and you could be a casual player, competitive player, or otherwise. You've got the and the other team will decide to just dip out, and you're forced to play a bot game, or you're forced to play a game with 1 or 2 players, because you've got people that continuously revolve through. You've got a continuous attrition rate with that. So my questions tonight, and I'm going to first address this with the question of how do you see this impacting competitive, casual, and streamer players, and is this something that you've personally experienced? I want to actually start with LeninCat, because I'm your biggest fan.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and follow the meme train on that one, okay?
Yeah, there's plenty of fans now, I've noticed. Or my little entourage. So yeah, dodging games, primarily, this only takes place in MM. I wouldn't say it really affects the competitive sphere of the game. But I do think it really lowers the quality of matches, and I think it promotes generally, I mean, poor learning habits in a way. I'm not saying everybody has to play the game to be, you know, a competitive player or anything, but as I've noticed, there are a few streamers, just other people that like you see the names of, and they're familiar with our names. I often play in stacks of 4 people with other competitive players or streamers or top players or whatever. And often they'll also be in stacks or on their own sometimes, and they'll just dodge a game because they feel like they're either not going to win or they don't want to, they don't want to have to fight that kind of way to deal with us. Um, so, yeah, just insofar as the impact I think that has overall, we recently just got a patch where the matchmaking started putting us against much overall much more fair games against higher rep players. And the one problem that remains after that, and props to Ubisoft for actually fixing that it's had a pretty big impact as I've noticed. The one lasting impact is the people leaving games. There's no punishments in place or anything like that for leaving repeatedly. You have that great 30-second grace period at the beginning of games, which practically just encourages you to leave if you don't feel like losing.
I think that's a really good point. I wanna hop in on that real quick. So you've got the only time you're gonna get punished is after that time has passed. So
Yep.
ultimately, what you're painting the picture for us on is like yourself as a competitive player who plays with various individuals from the competitive scene. Some of them may or may not be streamers, and what you run into is that the entire other you're someone who's known throughout the competitive community, and some casual players, some streamers will recognize that name and say, "Oh shit, it's Lenin, it's Rawit," and you got all these you got all these other names that are recognized the in the competitive scene, and people are like, you know what, I really don't want to try that. I don't want to go that route with it, right?
Mm.
So
Yep.
I would say I can understand, somebody not wanting to get their face raffle stomped. So depending on like where they're at during the night, if they've had a really rough night, I can understand doing that once or twice. But at the same time, you're never going to get better if you don't take the time to play the people that you don't want to play. That's kind of the way I see it. I think there's always going to be an exception. There's always the what ifs. Some people just play for fun. They don't want to get raffle stomped all the time. But it is a competitive game. You're going to lose. And you're going to win. It's you got to take the wins and losses, right? I want to follow up and get a perspective from Fatal on that. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I can understand why some people would leave games. They can say it's not fun for them. You can be a streamer, for example, and say like it's ruining the stream because you're not winning and you're just getting stomped, and I can see why that's not as fun or people won't be entertained. I mean, there's a certain amount of reasons people can come up with to have a reason to leave a game, but ultimately, I don't think it's right either way. Like, no matter what your reason is, I feel like you're damaging other players who are just trying to play a game. Like, from another perspective, I solo queue a lot these days, like for the last 5 seasons. And like, let's say I run into a score stack, right? I mean, I understand these players just want to have a game too, and they want to just fight someone who's decent. And I'm not going to leave a game just because I don't want to lose. There's no reason to do it. So like, it's better I stay and fight them than maybe get replaced by a rep 0 or a rep 14, right? Or
That
just like
happens a lot,
leave
a
a
lot
bot in
more
the
than
game.
people
Like maybe a
expect.
bot just stays in the game, and so now players have to play with a bot. So like, you really do ruin the game for everyone else in the match if you just leave. And it's like, and I'll say you're a 4 stack, right? You're a streamer. You got 4 stack going. You're fighting. You come up against Lenin's group because Lenin's he can only play in 4 stacks because that's how terrible he is. And uh, you run into that, and you're just like, I don't want to deal with that, right? So you leave and you're like, it's okay, they'll be fighting bots, but Lenin still, his stack is going to fight bots, and that's not fun either way. They wouldn't
Yeah.
queue into matchmaking if they wanted to fight bots, right? So like, either way, like, there's no reason to have to do that. Like, nobody wins. I mean, you could say you win because you're leaving the match. You get to pick your battles, but you never get better. If you pick your battles, you don't get better.
Wait, hang
You're
on.
either stomping noobs or
You're reminding me of like GI Joe. Knowing is half the battle is kind of situation, right? Like we know who Lennon is, and knowing is half the battle. I think we can win the other half of the battle by getting the hell out of Dodge.
queue into noobs and just stomp them. But like, it's you don't learn. Lenin said that, and I agree. Like, you don't learn if you just keep fighting, if you keep stomping noobs with like a four stack of just average players. And here's the thing, it's like, I see a lot of streamers say like they just don't want to fight at that level, or it's too sweaty, or that's not their play style. They don't like to gank and stuff. But I've seen like 50 streamers reach that level, and they're doing the same thing that competitive players are doing. They just weren't there at that time.
Mhm.
Like, I'll call out Bleach Medicine here. I'll call out. Actually, I don't want to call out many streamers here. I don't want
Let's
people
not call
yelling, but
out. Let's not
I,
let's not
I do
make
call
call
out.
outs.
But
That's a
I've
little
seen many
excessive.
streamers. I've seen many streamers complain that about players' playstyle. They reach that level, and they're like, "Why are people leaving games against me?" So, I think as a community,
Oh, I
we
see
should
where
just
you're going.
stay in the
Okay.
games. Yeah, as a community, we should just stay in the games and just play it out. And at the end of the day, it's easy EXP. If you get stomped, quick EXP, quick gold. You know,
But
that's all I have to say on that.
it's not the same experience though. It's not that you should it doesn't have the same satisfaction, you know. It's a and also you mentioned streamers and the experience with streamers. A streamer, the way it hurts, it does impact streamers, and this is not just bashing people that do this. You know, this is to bring. I don't like to say the word awareness. This is to bring insight into why how it impacts the community as a whole. This is the way it impacts streamers. Is streamers have got to have content, right? And myself as a streamer, I've had people that are in my that I consider in my community, right? That have bounced out sometimes. So the way that works out is like, I thought we were friends. I thought we were cool. What happened there? And they were in a four stack and they bounced and they're like, oh, we're not gonna do that. I was like, okay, well, it is what it is, you know. But it is something that sometimes can cause frustration. Like when you're like, oh, dude, they're gonna give us a really good challenge. I want to go up against those individuals, and they're the ones who take off, and it's like, damn, that kind of sucks. So it also affects streamers' content in a way too. It pumps the brakes for the streamer, and the streamer has really no control over that at all whatsoever. Um, Daddy Law, I think that leaves us to you yourself. I know that you are the king of trash talk, and some people might not want to play with you because they know that you're going to say something that may or may not be accurate, and is definitely going to be 100% funny as shit if they play with
Most
you.
probably.
Exactly, you're an entertainer, and I get
Most
that.
probably.
So tell us,
Yeah,
what are your
yeah.
thoughts on the dodging of the games?
To me, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I understand the whole thing of, leaving a game is going to ruin the experience for the people that are there, and at a certain level that people might not want to play against or whatever. But the way that I look at it is, if it's a game that you don't see yourself enjoying, a match that you know you're not going to have fun in, whether it's at a level you don't like playing at, kind of like Fatal was saying, or it's just in general something you see yourself not being happy playing it and getting pissed off, and you'd rather not do that and find a different game with maybe a different comp or something, or players you don't recognize. I can understand that. I personally do that myself. I'll be entirely honest with it. If I go up against a competitive stack, I'd personally rather leave than stay in the match, because I know I'm going to get pissed off. But just like you were saying there, as a streamer, you got to think about what you're doing live. And if I get mad on stream, me personally, I feel the quality of the content drops.
Hmm.
So it's not just the choice of me getting pissed off and not wanting to stay in, it's a choice of keeping the stream lively and positive with good content.
Right.
But I do also agree with the points that both Lennon and Fatal have made, that it does ruin the experience and it does kind of impose bad habits to players. With the 30-second leave time at the start, they can run forward really quick, see what their play, maybe try and judge what someone's play style is like with the very first encounter, and very quickly leave, like instantaneous. Like maybe close that window down a little bit so there's less time to leave, or just remove the ability to leave without a penalty overall.
Well, that takes the wind out of my sails. I was literally about to say, none of us are saying remove it altogether, but I can't even say that now. You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me, Smalls. I was gonna do my famous, can we all agree that that we're not saying that we should remove this? Because
I mean, I don't agree. Actually, I don't think you should remove that the 30-second there, because I mean, there's
Right.
a variety of reasons why players will want to leave early, and it's not because they're trying to dodge a game. Maybe it's
Right.
because they need to leave the game, and
One of
so
their
I feel
teammates
like
gets DC'd, or they have bots on their team already.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's why they brought it in to begin with. Is that I think they brought it in around the time Breach was released, if I remember right. You know, you don't want to take a hit on Breach, and You gotta have a way to drop out real quick if you have a really bad. Oh no, I'm thinking of something else. But same basic concept. You know, you have a bunch of people that leave. You have bots and other those positions are not getting filled or whatever it is, and you wanna bounce out. You have the option of doing that without like getting a penalty. So I understand that's a good thing to have in some ways because people are going to leave regardless, and there are some people that get disconnected, and it's right at the matchmaking section. This is actually a really good point to bring up on this, is that I know that some people, for whatever reason, either the Ubisoft servers or their PC, or there's a bug in the game, something that causes somebody to hang, so to speak, when they're loading. So on the loading screen, they just get dropped out. I know somebody that someone in my community, my Twitch community, will say, like I want to play with, like, okay, cool. So there'll be a game or two, and then on the second or third game, on the loading screen, it kind of hangs up for them, and the game crashes. And there's nothing that they can do about that, unfortunately. There's something with the connection, or a series of events, a series of unfortunate events. Please don't copyright strike me, whoever the hell did that movie. So anyway, but you see my point. So I see, but that's something that I think that if you took it away altogether, and that's why I say I don't think it should get removed, but I think it's something that I think players should be aware of as to how it impacts the other people. Like, you don't want to play a game against bots all the time. So, I don't know. Just think about it. If you're somebody who's excessively leaving games, like every for 5 games you're leaving it over and over and over again because you don't want to play that person or that 4-stack or something. Maybe it's fate. Maybe it's Fatal-Feit. Maybe you should just fight him. So that's it. I mean, it's
so I do want to piggyback. One thing, I mean, I kind of look to Dota 2 or something similar as like kind of the paragon of what a leaver penalty should look like. You generally get maybe 1 or 2 abandons every week or two. They may have changed it since then, but I quit playing Dota 2 a while ago. But the problem is if I match a 4-stack against a 4-stack, it's like, Ice Guys joins or something, right? And he's playing with the subs, and he's like, all right, fuck this, I'm out. The problem then is we're left in this bot game. They don't have any repercussions. And it could be a not streamer. It could be just, a group of other 4, friends or whatever playing. But they can do this repeatedly in the same time frame. They could do this the entire day if they wanted to, just like deliberately dodge you constantly. There's nothing stopping them. So what Dota 2 does is you get that 1 or 2 game grace period for every week or two or whatever. This might have to be different for Honor because it's generally quicker games. But I would like to see something like that put in place, because it's not an exaggeration when I say I think about 25-30% of the games I play are bot games. And sometimes new players will trickle in, and there'll be some like rep 1 warden wearing the flying Liss outfit, like he's just new to the game, right? And I think that's a pretty substantial issue.
So I think you bring up a really good point with the maybe limiting it. Maybe not necessarily, definitely. I really don't think taking it out's the answer. And I don't think any of us really believe that that's the absolute answer. I agree with Daddy. Maybe you could potentially lower the window, but ultimately, if you don't lower the window, but you do put something in like a like what you were saying with Dota 2, I could piggyback off of that with saying, I'm mentioning a completely different game genre. You got Final Fantasy 14, where it's an MMO, and you're queuing up for a dungeon, right? You're queuing up for a dungeon. And some people will go AFK, or they'll just be like, you know what, I can't go right now. I'll cancel out or whatever, because there were certain reasons that originally they would see what dungeon it was that they were queuing for, if they were doing for random dailies or something like that, or like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that one. So what they did is they put in place, if you do it twice, that's okay. You have a grace period. If you do it 3 times in a day, I think it is, then you get like a 90-minute or 45-minute or something penalty or something. It's pretty harsh, but it's basically either you can do the dungeon, which will take maybe 20-30 minutes, or you can get a penalty for like 45 minutes. It's kind of that. And right now our penalty for dodging matches, or not dodging, but in the middle of a match, if you're just dropping out, I think it is 15 minutes or something like that.
Yep, it's 15 minutes. and
Yeah,
it
so
doesn't scale. That's a critical thing as well. In Dota, if you continue to dodge, even after your initial punishment, it will continue to escalate and get more severe over time. Uh, I'm totally okay with just some shit happens, you gotta go. My wife's in labor or something crazy. My dog just vomited on the floor, whatever, right?
yeah,
Like,
you're not gonna keep dodging
yeah,
at that point. Clearly, you're like, oh man, I gotta go to the ER.
make the leeway for the people who deserve it, and don't for the people that don't. It's pretty simple. I wish they had something more quote unquote intelligent for their punishing people who leave MM. This might be something that gets brought up, or somebody was going to bring up, but ranked queues would kind of, I mean, if the game in an ideal world, right? Like, unfortunately, we're not really there yet. If ranked queues exist and they're populated, and we could go against people of equal skill, other teams all the time, we would. We absolutely would. But unfortunately, we're kind of limited because there's only a 1v1 ranked mode, and most people consider it another failure. And it doesn't work, or it takes too long to get into a match, right? They had 4v4 ranked for a time, but
I remember
within
that.
the comp community, literally we had a
We had to
term
set
called
that
the
up.
yeah, we either had to set it up, or there was a term called the Russian window, where a couple Russian teams would play, and we just knew when they would get on. So we would go fight them, and those games were fun for what they were.
There's actually a big
Um,
community in Russia
yeah.
that plays For Honor too.
Yep, for
So
sure.
I'd say what helped the ranked Dominion during those moments, those very short periods, were the fact that it was like you could only queue by yourself. And I feel like that's a
Mhm.
big thing where like I know this could
mm-hmm.
really hurt a lot of people. Like this could really hurt a lot of streamers and stuff, but I feel like if they had a rule where players can only queue by themselves, like players who queue by themselves will only go up against solo queues, I feel like that might actually help a bit, just because players don't feel like they are being oppressed by like a whole four stacks of competitive players. Because now it's going to be more like maybe I have Lenin on my team versus Scorebrand and I don't know La Weeaboo, right? Something like that. Um, when we did ranked duels, ranked Dominion, it was a lot like that, and it was a lot of us were just kept playing that because it was fun like that, and we never knew, what the match would be. We never knew how it would be set up. Uh, I feel like it was a little more dynamic and interesting that way. But I know streamers, they want to play with their friends, they want to set things
Right.
up, but I feel like maybe they should just start making people who stack together fight players who stack together. Uh,
Kind of like a solo queue and a squad queue, so to speak.
yeah, essentially a solo
Let's-
queue and a
You
squad
could
queue.
have different basically, I think of that as like different lanes of a highway, so to speak. You have one for this, one for that. That makes me think of Heroes of the Storm going MOBA here. Heroes of the Storm has a basic you have 5 people to a team. And there's different classes, there's different roles that the matchmaking looks at for that game. But ignoring that for a moment, what they do is they look at, okay, we want to matchmake this group against this group. This group has 2 people in a group together in a party. This group over here, we want to have somebody else who's also in a party together to even the odds. So that group may look like 2 people, 3 people, and I think they try to keep it really close together. Like if it's 2 on one, 3 on the other, they keep it really close as like one person. If you have a 5 stack, or if you have 3 people, then you have 2 people. You've got a group of 5 there. On the other side, you're going to get as close to a 5 group, a full group of 5 people, or split up, 2 and 3 again on the other side. They try to do that. Now, what happens with this, and this is why some people would give us some pushback on this, is that if you add a mechanic to that in matchmaking, you're going to potentially increase the duration of the wait time. So the question becomes, are the players ready and prepared to wait longer to get into a game if they are going to get a better, a better equal footing in terms of skill levels, or a better footing in terms of whether or not it's a 4 stack, or whether or not there's multiple grouped people in their queue with them. So
Yes.
I think that it's something that it's definitely something that's debatable. And it really comes. I think that's what it really would come down to at that point, is whether or not people are prepared to wait longer. And of course, the counter argument to that is going to be, well, they're already dodging games. They're already effectively waiting that much longer. So that would be something to cull any outcry. I'm looking at you, community. Any outcry that may have against something about waiting longer with matchmaking, because that's something I think that could, potentially, be a potential option. Now, how complicated it would be to implement, I have no idea. I know that programming wise, and I know matchmaking wise, that's a big topic that's or a big concern of a lot of people, because we have matchmaking queues that sometimes take too long, and that's mostly for people at the highest skill levels. It takes longer for like duels or Dominion matches, because you're just at such a high point in those brackets of skills that it takes longer to branch that out. So those are the main people I think it would affect the most. But where we're going to hear is more of an outcry from them, or someone who's more playing more casually, that gets more games more frequently. And I think it's going to be the latter. Somebody who's ready, who's getting games every 2 to 3 minutes, they're going to be more upset about that than somebody who normally waits about 8 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes for a game.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think just about everyone would prefer having, I'd say, was ballpark 20% longer wait times on average, right? So if you're 2 or 3 minutes, it takes, I don't know, 4 or whatever, right? I'm not doing actual math here.
Yeah.
I'd rather wait the full 15 minutes. By the way, if you didn't know, the timeout for MM is 15 minutes. It resets you to the main menu at that point.
There you go. There's a good counterpoint too.
So after a point, I'd just prefer to wait a little bit longer to get a better game. As for how longer, I would guess around like 10 to 12 minutes is about my breaking point, where I'm just like, all right, what the hell's happening here? And to be honest, I just want to bring this up as a final thing. I think that what happens in the community on the whole is, even, there's this little bit of a sphere in the community where they kind of just like blanket hate people who are, in their eyes, trying hard in MM, or, being sweaty gamers, all that. And they'll like encourage the kind of behavior towards like streamers or other players. And I think it's really unfortunate, because the whole, like, you're just trying hard and being, a turtle or whatever descriptor you want to throw at anybody, right?
Yeah.
It's about as dismissive as you can get. And I think that more people would really enjoy that kind of play style. Well, not everything about it, but some parts of it. Target swapping, positioning. There's a ton of mechanics to mess around with and learn. I still learn things now, even still. And I just think it's really unfortunate that, because of these people, dodging, it's really hampering MM, and it gets kind of perpetuated. And I think leaving games in progress also makes the MM queues inadvertently longer too, because now a bunch of people are leaving, so they're the algorithm, I'm guessing it's an algorithm, is trying to join a game in progress against 4 people who already have all 3 points capped, and they're at like 600 points. And you join that, and it's just like, what the fuck am I doing here?
That's never fun. So I want to follow up with on we've talked a lot. We've actually gone through pretty much most of the questions that I had for all of us. We talked about how do we see this impacting competitive, casual, and streamer players. We did talk about the reasons why somebody might leave a match before it's even started, and that was like if you're a streamer and you're going up against somebody who is toxic, or somebody who's just gonna raffle stomp yourself and all of your, or mostly your people that are with you. However you're looking at it as overall. Well, this is maybe an instance I may want to just go ahead and dip out for the overall good of the content. Or if you're casual and you're going up against a comp setup, and you're brand new, or you're low rep, you're low skill, you just don't have the experience, and somehow you just get match made against them. Nobody, I don't think, is going to blame you for like, all right, I think I should probably drop out. But there are people that will stay in, and they have a really, really positive interaction with this. I had a brawl match just last week, I think it was, that I go in, and this guy's like, oh, well, damn it, I'm going to die. And he was low rep, whatever rep it was. And I'm like, okay, well, my initial thought was, oh, he's being negative about it. But as the fight progressed, he was saying, he, she, whatever, was saying really positive things like, "Hey man, it was good to play with you. This has been really fun." And I even ledged him. I even ledged the guy. It was in brawls that I ledged the guy.
How
It
dare
was
you.
I was like, "All right,
No,
well,
oh,
I got to
wow.
I took advantage of it. I'm sorry, I'm not really sorry." And he's like, "Well, that was fun. It was good playing with you, man. Really good fight." He said, "Good fight, GG." And the other guy who had reputations on him, who had experience, that was the person who was being toxic. So you have the newer player who was getting beaten, who was trying. I even ledged him. He still had good things to say and was happy to play with us, right? You know?
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
cool. I thought that was amazing. And then you have the other
I
person who's
mean,
toxic. He even
yeah.
left at the end. Like, come on. So anyway, so let me finish up here. So that we address that. Why players should stay if they're confident they will lose. We talked about that for the overall health of the community. It really comes down to that. So my question in sort of final thoughts is dodging games. Is this healthy for the community? And I want to come back to Fatal-Feit.
I don't think it is. I mean, Lenin was, to Lenin's point, I really think people who dodge games really do start to create a stigma, and they start to spread it. That's like there are certain demographic of players that you can
Sort
leave
of
because they're too
normalize.
hard, they're too sweaty, they're too competitive kind of thing. Like screw them, we can, they're not like us, they don't have fun, they're just, tryhards, whatever, and we can leave them. It's fair, and it sort of does spread around, and people start to have that sort of stigma, and it starts to develop. And then you have people who are like, oh, target swapping is not a good mechanic, or it's not a fair mechanic, let's not do that, let's leave people who do target swapping. And you start to have people who pick their matches, and it's not people. First of all, you pick your matches, you don't learn. And if you pick your matches, well, other people aren't going to have fun. You're going to leave people at bots, and other people just don't have as much fun because you want to have a certain game that you believe fits you. And for me, like, I'm just gonna, like, I have to say, like, this reminds me of that argument people make where it's like, I bought Xbox Live, so I'm allowed to harass other players. I bought Xbox Live,
Ooh.
so I'm allowed to say that,
Ooh.
I'm allowed
Yeah,
to
I see. It's my game.
have
I do what I.
profanity online. Yeah, it's mine. I own it, and that's not true. You purchase a service, right? And
Mhm.
and and ultimately, Ubisoft don't want you to leave games. I mean, they give you headroom to leave a game if you need to, but they actually don't want you to leave matchmaking. That's not the point.
The
Of
point
having
is to
that leave
fight.
button.
It's a fighting
Yeah,
game,
like
so
you're supposed to stay and fight. And so ultimately, like, you are kind of abusing a system, and I am going to use the word abuse, and I just feel like I am I am strongly on the side that's like it's not right. There's no point to doing it. I can understand why you have to at certain times. I can understand, maybe, for one reason or another you just don't want to.
Mhm.
But if you repeat it over and over, if you're one of those players that choose your matches, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with you.
I completely understand where you're coming from. And I'm glad you added that on because I was going to say the same thing. It's ultimately it's if you're doing it, doing it here, doing it there. There are circumstances, it is understandable in certain cases, but when it comes down to when you're like ultimately just repeating it over and over and over again, at some point you got to say, why am I doing this? Why am I leaving these games? And really take a take a deep look inside of your inner self and determine why it is as a player you really want to leave these games. So Daddy Law, is this healthy for the community?
Overall, no. 100% no. People leaving games, they're ruining the experience for each other. They're making themselves thin skinned, so to speak, whenever it comes to finding matches. If you're not going to go against people that are generally better than you, you're not going to get used to fighting at that. You're going to get used to fighting against people that don't actually know how to play the game.
All right, fair
So
enough.
overall, it's not helping the community, and it's not helping the person that's actually leaving.
Fair point. And final thought to you, LeninCat.
I would just like to say, if you just Google the Scrub Lord's Prayer, you will find exactly how I feel usually. Uh, whatever. I mean, it's just, you're not going to get any better. You're actively degrading the quality of other people's experience with the game. I mean, me, though I'm bothered by it, I really could, in the grand scheme of things, care less. It's really that you're ruining it for your teammates. You're ruining it for the people that have to join in progress after to a game that's 600 points into one.
Mm.
I just think it's kind of a sad situation, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the overall situation. it is frustrating, I think, for everybody all around. So kind of what we've come up with is that it's frustrating for most people, and and it's something that is not really healthy for both sides. If you're repeatedly doing it, maybe consider not doing it, because if you're doing it to avoid certain matchups, like like competitive as an example, like you can get better at the game if you take the time. But if you are somebody who just plays after work with your friends, and you want to play up against somebody who's closer to your skill level, I'll understand if you leave against like a competitive 4-stack as an example, and you're nowhere near their level, and you admit that. That's actually takes a lot of I'll say the word, it takes a lot of balls to admit that about yourself, that you like, we're nowhere near that level. It's not going to be good for them if they go up against us, because it's going to be raffle stomped. It's not going to be good for us because we're not going to meet them at that level. So, we can kind of understand that. But if you're doing it repeatedly regardless, maybe after that third game, maybe consider not doing it. So
I mean, like, if you're like a 4-stack and you run into rep zeros, like, if they want to leave, that's understandable, right? Like, you're better
For
off
sure.
fighting bots. They're not going to have fun. Bots are probably going to be better than they are. They don't have to suffer for it. So moments like those, it's perfectly fine.
yeah, we completely, like I said, we completely understand there's certain circumstances. So, to reiterate here, my name is Norgoz. I'm your host this evening, and I am joined by the daddiest of laws, the fatalist of fates, and the Leninist of cats. Don't ask me why I reintroduced them that way. It just sounded good in my head. So, really glad that you guys have joined us this evening. As a reminder, if you are restreaming this currently while we are live, you don't have myself or permission from myself or my guests to do that. It would be greatly appreciated if you would not undermine the hard work that we put into this. We put about, just tonight we're putting in about 4 hours of time that's invested into this. About 3-4 hours of time that's going to be invested into this show, not including what we've done leading up to this. So we do appreciate that, guys. Moving on to our next topic, and I think that it's only appropriate that we've been talking about, matchmaking and game modes, that we talk about removing game modes. Tribute and elimination are the two primary ones that are going to be in question. And I want to give you guys some context here. So the context is matchmaking has been a touchy subject for as far back as I think all of us can probably remember. It seems 4v4 is the go-to game mode for the majority of the player base. And if you want to do anything else, especially if you want to do tribute or elimination, you're going to be waiting some time. I myself, my favorite mode is probably duels, and brawls is probably my second favorite. I thoroughly do enjoy Dominion, but it's not something that I want to go straight into just because that's the where everybody is at. So what we're posing here is, if you were to remove game modes, be it tribute, elimination, or otherwise, how might this impact matchmaking as a whole? And whether or not, are those people still going to be around? Are they going to just move to different game modes? Are they going to quit? Things of that nature. So my first question is going to be, what are your 3 favorite game modes? And how often do you play them? I'm going to start with LeninCat.
Dominion definitely takes first. And I guess Breach is a second. Sometimes, if there's a bunch of orders for it, or, double steal or double XP or something crazy going on, we'll do. If I had to pick a third, even though I don't really play any other modes, I'd probably pick Brawl. Although I wish Revenge wasn't in Brawl, because I'm a competitive and kind of used to that, being the way that you run that mode. So yeah.
Okay. We're gonna go with following up with Daddy. What are your 3 favorite modes?
Breach, Dominion, and Skirmish. Funny enough.
Skirmish.
Which I never play because you cannot find the game, unfortunately. Not all, ever.
Exactly. And I want to back up for a moment, and I want to say this before I forget it. One of my favorite modes is Deathmatch. I loved Deathmatch. Deathmatch was one of my most played modes in Season 1. I played Deathmatch and I played Duels primarily in Season 1. And you could always get that Deathmatch, you could always get the Duel, you could always get everything. We had the player base that substantiated it. And we still have a very strong player base, just to not get distracted from that. We talked about this a few episodes ago, comparing For Honor with other fighting games like Mortal Kombat 11, Tekken, and Street Fighter 5. And For Honor has a bigger player base than all of them, And, those are all traditional fighting games. We all recognize For Honor is not a traditional fighting game, but it is a fighting game. To call it anything otherwise, you're kind of taken away from the point of fighting, right? So anyway, I digress. What are your 3 favorite modes, Fatal?
Probably Dominion for my first one, just because it's probably the most competitive mode in the game. It's the most balanced. It's the most entertaining. I mean, last episode we were talking about how like the mechanics of the game, it's not as deep as it could be, and we went a little bit on that. And I feel like one of the issues with For Honor as a fighting game is that it doesn't have that flair to it. It doesn't have that it doesn't have supers, right? Like the heroes don't have
Right.
supers. They don't have those like cool things like that's happening. So you get those in 4v4s, right? With the feats or Vortiger getting like a what do you call it? A flip on 4 players. Like those are the moments you can have in the game. That's like comparable to other fighting games. So 4v4. So it's like for me, it's like Dominion's my first one. Breach is very close. I do like the dynamic of Breach as a very fun casual game. It's moderately long. There's other stuff you can do like objectives and um, PVE. But I actually really like Elimination, but like not pure Elimination, but like I am one of those people who really enjoyed Elimination when it was that whole 1v1 thing. And then once you kill your guy, you go and watch the next person fight, and
Right,
then you
right.
join in, and you have sort of this honor thing going on. And I've always felt like they're For Honor has missed a chance to really take advantage of that, because I know there is a lot of players who really like watching players
Oh,
fight.
absolutely.
Like 1v1s is boring because it's just you and one other person, but when you have a group together just watching, like a fight club, like in
Fight
Dark
Club.
Souls or something, exactly like a Dark Souls fight
Yep.
club, and I would love if they revamped Elimination to be something more like that, because as it is right now, it's kind of flawed. You just run around for boost, and then you go in and fight, but that's how it's played now. But like if they revamped it, tweaked it a little bit, it may go back to normal the way people enjoyed it before, where it's just like 1v1, 1v1, and
Ooh,
I don't know.
yes,
That was
yes,
really
yes,
fun
yes,
for me.
That's something that I know that I've talked about with, when I've I did fight clubs at one point myself as well, and I would love to have a mode. I've talked about that before. I would love to have a fight club mode, basically, and we could talk about how that could vary. We all might have different visions of it, but at the end of the day, like if you go into, you have it's a and it would probably have to be like an open deathmatch, like a classic deathmatch look, like everybody is on their own team, and I don't think that they have the option of doing that with the way that their engine is built. I don't know if they can do that, but still, you could do like a 3-on-3 or something like that, and you could just kind of go until the other one, and that is kind of deathmatch in a sense, yes. But you have the power-ups that are in there, so you're encouraged to use those, and it's not all centralized. So if you centralize that, which I think is kind of what Fatal-Feit's implying, is that getting to it where it's all centralized, where you've got like a circle, like an actual fight club. You have a circle, you have 2 people in the center, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, kind of deal. That is, to me, I think that would be absolutely fun. And the question remains, though, is that something that the community would embrace? I think a lot of streamers would absolutely embrace it. Absolutely, I think that I think they absolutely would. I think that would be fun. It would be like a mini tournament. It kind of be like a mini tournament. Like it would be like those, what is it? What duels were they? The hyper duels or whatever. It'd be like hyper duels, but on steroids, because you have multiple people that are in there doing the same thing. And I think that them experimenting with the hyper duels aspect, I thought that was really cool. I loved that. I was really happy to see that happening, because duels taking extra time because we're going the time between rounds. I myself, I don't mind like going right back into it, but it also does set the pace to give you a chance to breathe and so on and so forth. So I can see both sides of that. So my follow-up question for you guys is, so my 3 right now is Dominion, because it's just the most populated, and yes, there's a lot of skill that's involved with like 1vx situations. I enjoy that. Duel and probably brawls. I don't play Breach that often. I do enjoy it when I do play it, but I tend to stay away from it just because it's just a longer game mode. So that's my aspect of that. But yeah, I would say if we put in a game mode kind of like what we're talking about, I'd probably go to that a lot. So my question is, if those game modes were removed, like Tribute and Elimination, because myself, Fatal, and Daddy have said, hey, we kind of like Elimination, Skirmish, or Deathmatch. So if those two were removed, would you guys expect the other games to flourish, other game modes to flourish more? Do you see players going straight to Dominion? Do you think that they'd be more likely to quit outright? Where do you see that going? And I'm gonna give this one to Daddy.
I couldn't really see it affecting the queue times or how fast or how populated the game modes will be realistically. Because if you think about it, there's streamers that I watch who religiously play a certain game mode. For example, Lord Dam. That man plays Jules religiously, consistently, and he's not the biggest fan of Force. Now, how much do you think he would play For Honor if his favorite game mode was taken away? You know?
Mm.
Now, think of that for the other people who, they don't enjoy Dominion because maybe whenever they go into elimination or deathmatch, it's the whole thing you were talking about there. It's like 4 1v1s and you watch each other fight. They're used to that kind of game mode, they're used to that kind of play and stuff. And if that's removed and then they're forced into this new environment of Dominion where there's 3 objectives, there's a lot more stuff you got to pay attention to that brings stalling into the game, rotations, mid control. There's a lot more to think about, there's a lot more to do. And if they're forced into that environment, I couldn't see them enjoying it extensively. They would have to put time into learning it, which is expected, but I could see it not really affecting the queue times because I reckon a lot of people would maybe veer away from the game a little bit if they were removing game modes. It's kind of like the whole meme of, oh, delete Shinobi. Obviously, they can't do that because people love the hero and people want to keep playing the hero. I wish they would delete it. Yeah, you need to. But still,
I know a lot of people have their calls with Shinobi. I know they do. I want to ask a follow-up question to you, and I want to add this when I go around the circle. So, what can we do? We being the community or the dev team, what can be done to improve those modes to bring more people into it without removing them and without completely changing the dynamic of them into like a which we talked about, like a Fight Club kind of thing, which would be fun, but without entirely like gutting it and revamping it to an entirely different mode, because that takes away from the whole point of we want to keep it. What elements could be added to it to maybe intrigue more players to kind of jump into it more? Daddy.
Rotate special events throughout the different categories of games. You got your 4v4 game modes, maybe, stick a loot fest that's specifically in the 4v4 modes for people that will need to get gear. If, for Duels and Brawls, put in maybe 1.5 times XP. That'll make more people want to go in there. But then again, it's XP's time based, so that wouldn't really make sense.
I think that's...
But you see what I'm saying? Little small things to sort of incentivize people going in there, and then having them experience that maybe would make them like the game mode a little bit more.
I think that you're onto something with the XP thing. So we could potentially have an XP bonus that's rotated on a weekly basis. There you go. There's your incentive to play elimination. I think that, that right there could be a huge bonus. And there's no downside. There is literally no downside to that at all whatsoever. It rotates weekly, and you got it in elimination this week. Next week, you got it in Dominion. Next week, you got it in Duels. There's literally no downside. And people that want to play the game just to level up, they're going to play in those categories where there's the double XP. Right there, you eliminate the opportunity, or you eliminate the incentive for people to leave the game because they got to stay in that game to get the XP bonus. So you eliminate two things with that. That's like getting two cats with one shoe. I mean, that's kind of a big one right there. I think you hit the nail on the head, my friend. That's a really good one. So, same questions to LeninCat is going to be like, if those game modes were removed, what do you think the players would do? How would they react? And also, what can we do to improve these modes, primarily elimination, without elimination and tribute, without removing them or completely gutting them and revamping them entirely? If there's anything else that you have to think on that one.
So the first thing I want to say about this is that I think naturally that even the most low skill or like new player type individual will gravitate towards, and this happens in fighting games too, right? You might understand what I mean when I say this, but like they're going to gravitate towards a lot of things with a lot of depth. Some people will just do that naturally. For example, if you play Tekken and you want to, you're picking a new character, like, oh, I want to play Lee, I want to play Yoshimitsu, I want to play whatever, right? And those characters are notoriously difficult. They have high execution. I think similarly, parts of For Honor have that tinge to it, and I think it's baked into the game modes. There's a lot more decisions that you have to make on a macro level to really to play Dominion properly or to play Dominion efficiently. And I think the problem is, outside of maybe Breach or sometimes Tribute to an extent, it hasn't been explored too much. The other modes in the game really lack that. They lack that sort of approach. And I think that's why, I'm sure there's stats somewhere that say Dominion is the most played mode, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
I would say it's, yeah. So the problem is, Ubisoft has released, twice now to these two 4v4 focused game modes. The only game modes that we've gotten since release that have been tailored to 1v1s, 2v2s, or, elim, skirmish, deathmatch modes, whatever, have been event game modes. And you'll note that some of the most well-liked game modes are things like Dance of Death, Carousel of Death, Infernal Dominion. A lot of people hold in high regard. These kinds of extra little modifiers and things make people gravitate towards that. They're willing to try it out. I think similar kind of like miniature modifiers and things could attract people to the modes, but and this is getting to my point, I don't personally think that people who are staunch duelists or staunch 4v4 players like myself, I personally wouldn't find myself playing 1v1 if it had 10 new mechanics and every attack is faster by 100 ms or something ridiculous, right? Like I'm not. I don't play the game for those things, and a big deal for me is that a lot of these modes and interesting twists on game modes only last a week or two. The E3 announcement only lasted however long, 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say, and then it's gone. That the Shadows of Haidakiri mode. And it was interesting, and I know a ton of people played it.
That was
and
fun.
I'm sure they had fun with it.
Yeah,
It was pretty good.
It
was really fun.
So, but I didn't play it at all. Maybe you could say I missed out, right? And that's totally fine. And it's my bad. But the thing that I like much more than anything else, and it's gonna take something extremely drastic to get me to indulge in it. Maybe I'm an extreme, personally, but you would need to add some pretty big reworks to things like Tribute to get me to play it, or Duel or something like that, right?
Okay.
And how much you can do with those modes is kind of up in the air. Maybe they'll think of something. But I know also in regards to like Fatal was talking about the pseudo honor code, take your turn in elim thing. I know a lot of people kind of project that onto the game, and I think the devs are kind of scared of making it so that people can't do that on either side of the spectrum. A casual player, just wants to, watch some honorable duels and whatnot, right? I think they're pretty minimalist when it comes to stuff like that, and they don't want to project the, something being the right way to play or the best way to play or the most fun way to play. I think they're generally pretty, hands off with that sort of thing. So that's what I think personally. Fatal, take your turn.
Yeah, Fatal,
I mean,
thoughts?
onto that, I'm like, my thinking is the opposite of developers. I think they need to guide the players, they need to lead the players towards a certain play style. Not exactly, teach them to be all optimal, but like direct them towards a way they can learn or get better. You guys know me. I'm huge on motivating players, showing them the right way to advance themselves, so they don't have this mindset of just neglecting other players, hating competitive, etc., etc. And I think like every time I look at elimination and skirmish, I just think like my revamp for skirmish would just actually turn it into brawl or duels, but with 4 players. Just remove feats, just make it into a best out of 5 match of a group fight, so players can learn how to group fight with just one mode, and so they can take that to Dominion or something. And so elimination, on the other hand, I want that to be sort of a fight club, because now this community has an outlet for players who like playing with friends, but have get to be do their 1v1s, and they get to talk and chat with each other. They get to not be so toxic. They can just say teach new players who are learning the game, um, get together. I think it would be a great community game mode, but ultimately, to your question of like removing 2 game modes, I don't think it would actually change anything. I agree with Daddy Law and Lenin. Like you're gonna need huge incentives for us to want to play these game modes, and the only thing you can do is revamp it or change it drastically. And even if you do that, you might just interest us for about a week, 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah, it's a risk.
It's a risk, and you might again risk alienating the players who already like these game modes the way they are. And ultimately, like I don't like even if you remove them, like as Daddy Law was saying regarding players who like duels, they if you remove duels, they're not gonna go to Dominion because they like one kind of feature, and on the other end with Lenin, if you remove Dominion, he's not gonna go to duels because he doesn't like how that plays. So it's elimination of skirmish. I think unless you revamp it, unless they make a daring act, they might as well just leave it alone. Let players who play those play it, because even like I'll just say it too. Even if those players migrate to like 4v4s, you're not going to see a huge change because there's so few players who actually play those game modes that taking that population to the other game modes isn't going to affect it very much.
So what we need to do is, so I think the consensus here is not necessarily to remove them outright. You guys are suggesting that we come up with a revamp or an additional incentive for players to play those game modes. And I think that I think I could get behind that, because if you like XP as an example, there's literally no downside to adding an XP bonus on a weekly basis to certain game modes. I think that is something that would be a huge quality of life change for players everywhere, because when we see these double XP weekends, people like flock to For Honor. I mean, like, I don't want to throw the analogy out there that I'm thinking of, so we'll just say that people just flock to For Honor. I mean, it's a big attention getter. So people want to play it to level up and to get more loot, to get more levels, to get that rep 60 so they can go Super Saiyan. I mean, who doesn't want to have their power level over 9,000? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm cool with that. You know what I'm saying?
True.
Because a reputation at the end of the day doesn't really show your experience. I mean, not your experience, your skill level. It doesn't show your skill level. It shows your experience in the game to a point, but it doesn't show that you're better than somebody who's at rep 1. You can have somebody that's at rep 1 beat the shit out of you because, you just don't have as much experience as they do, or you're just not as good at reactions or whatever it may be. So I don't think there's any downside. Huh?
Or they're a Smurf.
Or they're a Smurf, exactly. I thought that in the back of my head. It just didn't come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they could be a Smurf, and you just can't handle it. So I mean, it's I think that XP is a really, really good one that's come out of this discussion.
So I would like to add like one or two more things. And you remember how I mentioned the Russian window before?
Yes.
There's actually a term in the competitive sphere of the game now. It's called Russian scrims. Well, it's been around for a while. So Russian scrims are you 1v1 in mid with minions on in Dominion, and you play with feats on, and you just play. Like you just kind of perfect your play style in mid, right? You get used to that 1v1 in mid, playing more optimally, getting more minions, getting punishes where you should. And so I think that sort of thing, they serve as gateways, or I think those sorts of things serve as more of a gate. I don't want to say the word the phrase gateway drug, but they're like a sort of a practice, like an ancillary tool to branching out to other modes. But I think that mainly goes from like the 1v1 to the more populous modes like 2v2 and 4v4. I think 2v2 is excellent for practicing for 4v4, and I know plenty of people in the competitive community do it all the time. I see it every day. And for Glory, people pinging for 2v2 scrims, they want to get something together. They just want to practice for an hour or whatever, right? I think those are the sorts of things the game needs to kind of push people towards like a competitive side of the game. But they are very much kind of reserved for that small sphere of the game, the community that is playing competitive already. I would love to see something kind of similar happen to just the casual community. That, they start to play those modes and learn the ways to play that some other people do. Because I think it can be enjoyable.
Oh
I
yeah.
think people would enjoy it if they got into that aspect of the game.
Just to
But
add something towards what you're saying,
yeah,
I've noticed a bunch of other discords adding in scrim sections.
yep,
Zero Crack has done it. I even added a scrim section to my Discord.
yep.
I've seen
There's
a bunch of people doing
also
it, which is really, really cool. And
Yeah.
if other people have Discords that are part of the community and are big enough, I throw it in there. Help teach, the more casual players a bit more about the more technical side of it. Like kind of like you were
yeah,
saying, LeninCat, target switching being something that people don't like and shit.
yeah,
It's part of the
Let them
game. You
learn.
got to learn that. If you're gonna be if you're gonna like find the ceiling of your play, you've got to learn to do target switching. You can target switch. Anybody can target switch. If you're on a controller, you let go, you click it again, or you can change it to toggle. You lock on and you just hit it again, and it toggles between characters. And I think you can do the same thing on keyboard. It's that simple. It's not a very hard concept to really understand. Where you get the complication of or the complexities of the target switching is when you're in the middle of like a 1vx situation and you want to target switch in the middle of attacks, like in the middle of your combo, in the middle of your mix-up. Like something that's really sexy to see is, I'm going to try and think of some good examples here, is like a warden who's doing his shoulder charge, and then he'll switch the last second, and he turns like on a dime, and boom, he's charging you in the face. You have to be ready for that. The same thing, I've seen that with, I believe I've seen it with, I
PK
think I've
dash
even,
attack as well. The PK dash attack is a good example as well. If you input the heavy really late into a forward dodge, you will kind of go up in the air, and then you'll backpedal and kind of turn around onto whoever you actually targeted onto. That's just one example. I mean, I think there's stuff in this game that
there's
looks
plenty
sick,
of that, yeah.
and you don't. I mean, you see it from like Zerg streamers, right? Like they're target swapping like 16 times in like 2 seconds, right? Like they know intuitively to do this at the top level. And I mean, Shaolin landing a light on somebody, going to key stance, kicking the other guy, and then lighting the other guy who's going to try and punish him for kicking the other guy.
Yeah.
That shit is sick. It's cool.
It's really good to see, and that goes back to the options of where we were talking about we talked about the honor code a few episodes ago, and how we need options in terms of how to do the really cool stuff. Like Fatal-Feit said just a little bit ago, we don't have supers in this game. We do have feats, but we don't have like actual supers. So you can kind of use feats as supers, but in general play, we want options. We need options. And whether or not you want options, you need them. You need to have those options to have the really cool plays. As an example of that, I want to, and this will be a good segue into our next topic, which is we're going to go into Hero Balance Gladiator. Gladiator has some of the most satisfying punishes in the game, but you have to be on point. If you want to get that 90 damage punish, as an example, when it's out of stamina, you got to be on point with the skewer, the dash light to skewer timing. You got to be on point with the follow-up, what is the heavy to heavy feint to the toe stab to the heavy, and it's 90 damage. That is very, very timing intensive. If you miss that skewer, it's not good for you. On Wake Up, if you miss it, that's it. They can get away from it, they can react to it. That's the point that I'm getting at. They can react to it, to keep it simple. So we're going to talk about, I want to talk about Hero Balance in terms of Gladiator this week, guys. And before I get into that, I want to reiterate that if you're just now joining us, thank you for being here. We really appreciate you. I'm your host, Norgoz, and I'm joined today by the daddiest of laws, the king of trash talk in the For Honor directory. We have Fatal-Feit, competitive player and renowned tester of the For Honor. And we have LeninCat, who is known throughout the competitive community as one of the gladiest of gladiators. So I'm really, really glad to have all these folks with me here tonight. And we've had a lot of really good discussions. And right now, we're talking about Hero Balance Gladiator. So currently, he currently has the weakest guard in For Honor. Although and arguably has the strongest zone, despite its mix-up potential, or Gladiator's mix-up potential in general, it is deemed somewhat weak. So my first question is going to be, where do you see Gladiator currently, and why do some people consider him weak? And I'm going to start this segment off with LeninCat, who, like I said, he is a Gladiator main or secondary main, however you want to look at it, and he's done his foray into the competitive scene a lot with the Gladiator. So I want to get your feedback first and foremost. What are your thoughts?
He used to be really good, and now he's really bad. He's trash, dude.
All right,
I
that's
play
it.
him
The
in
show's
MM,
over,
and it
guys.
makes me, yeah, it makes me cry. I played last night. I was just going into this podcast, and I'm like, I should probably play Gladiator to get a feel for how I really feel about him. Mind you, I haven't played him seriously in well over like 4 or 5, 6 months or so. It feels so bad to play that character in some ways, and great in others.
There's just not a balance.
He is a character of extremes in every sense of the phrase. He has 600 ms chain lights, which is probably the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, don't do that.
I think what is really bad, and I think I would hope is some part of like a rework or something they would consider at some point, a complete retooling, revamping, rework of Shield Dash on the whole. His role in for just to give like a little bit of a backdrop for those who aren't very competitive or don't watch competitive play very much. The Glad takes a kind of ganker Punisher role in a sense. He has really bad reflex guard at 500 ms, so half a second.
And just so that we're on the same page, let me say, so what, and the normal is for everybody else is how long?
1000 ms, except for Shinobi, who I think is 700. I might be wrong about that. I think it's 7. So his also kind of sucks.
There you go. Please continue.
Something I will eventually get to is it definitely. I feel like reflex guard needs to be normalized to 1000 ms across the board.
I think everybody could agree to that. I don't see the point in changing that all up. Anyway, go on.
So, the essential focus of Glad as a character in 4v4 at competitive levels is you stab toes, and other people hit the guy that you stab the toe of. That's kind of it. I mean, his other tools are really underwhelming.
Well, wait, hang on. What about his skewer?
Except for his zone. Skewer is pretty bad too, to be honest.
What about the skewer? What about the satisfaction of getting a skewer into a wall splat into a follow-up?
I'm not gonna argue it's kind of satisfying. I like the. Some people might not even know this because it never happens. But if you skewer somebody and their back is directly to a wall, they will get. You will get like a special animation where you can like bop them in the face with your buckler, and you get. This may not be the case anymore, but I think you used to be able to get a follow-up heavy. It might just be a light now, for all I know. Shout out to Freeze. I think I heard it there. I think that the heavy isn't confirmed recently.
He's got a video from like a month ago or something on the Punishes.
Yeah. Go to him for sure.
We'll put a link in the description on YouTube.
He so Gladiator has that like kind of visceral satisfaction. It's definitely like that. You get that kind of power fantasy in some senses. You're just like this, playful, boastful, guy in armor, very light armor, who's just stabbing people's toes, right? Like, it's fun. But then you reach competitive level and it all goes to shit. His bash is 600 ms and for the uninitiated, that's bad. It's very, very much in the sphere of reactable. It has one follow-up, which is a heavy, which you can feint, but that's it. It stuns on hit, which I'll get to like a suggestion bit later. But I know a lot of people are kind of allergic to stuns now after the Raider rework, so they might be a little scared of what I have to say. But the focus of Gladiator in 4v4 right now is just you stab toes and your teammates follow up on it. Now there are some pretty nasty situations that you can create. I recently found out that Gladiator toe stab you can with a black prior on against one person. You're in a 2v1 scenario. You can set up the second toe stab or get your undodgeable chain heavy for 40 damage afterwards if you just chain right after the first toe stab lands. And this gank can continue pretty ad nauseum, so it does a ton of damage. And that's like a niche scenario where he's really cool, right? Where you find those sorts of things about a character, and you work at like those little minutia, and you kind of optimize around it. But on the whole, I mean, he's got just 500 MS lights. His reflex guard sucks, and the one other redeeming characteristic about him is his zone. His zone used to be a 0 MS guard break vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
bash into a follow up attack that can be feinted.
Yep.
600 MS for until the first hit where the unblockable lands. It can be hard to dodge. A lot of people have trouble dodging it, but if you're like a freak of nature,
It's a weird animation, yeah.
If you're a freak of nature, then you have absolutely no problem dealing with this, and it hits maybe 10% of the times that the Glad throws it out, right?
And you can block the follow-up heavy if you dodge properly with the
Mhm.
proper timing. You can you can block the follow-up heavy, or even parry it if you're good enough.
Or parry it, or in the case of Kensei or maybe Conk, I'm not sure if this has changed over time, but you can superior block it into a guard break or some form of. So the real strength of this move comes in from there's a thing called option select where you hit your zone attack, and it acts as a parry. Which so essentially, if you react on an indicator, and you throw a zone attack out, you will either one parry the light attack if it's a light attack or a fast zone attack, for example. You'll get that parry and you'll get that punish. Or two, it'll be a heavy and it's slow enough to where your bash will land and you'll get the 20 damage follow up in time. So it's very much one of the safest moves in the game because if neither of those things happen, then you can feint it. There's no real scenarios where you're going to get punished for it. Some characters have attacks fast enough to do it for sure. The redeeming part about it is that it's it can be set up for some ganks.
Okay,
There's a lot about Gladiator that I find cool, but for suggestions, I mean, I'd like to hear what other people have to say about the hero.
Of
I'm definitely
course.
monologuing at length because I play the guy.
So we've got we've got the So you gave us a lot to digest. So I want to try and bring us back to what we talked about. So Gladiator has very satisfying punishes and group fighting or group punishes. He definitely has some weak points and he's got some really strong points. And I think that I want to before I go any further, I want to get some follow up in terms of from Daddy Law and Fatal. Daddy, what are you with everything we've discussed so far? What are your thoughts on where Gladiator is? Oh, and I think you said, before I forget this, I meant to say this, Lennon. I think you said, and I know what you were saying. You talked about the lights. Then you mentioned the guard switch. You said 500 milliseconds the second time, and then you said guard switch. I think you meant 600 milliseconds on the lights and 500 milliseconds on the guard switch the second time, right?
Oh yeah,
I think you got crisscrossed there. You said it right. You said it correctly the first time. I'm just trying to say for anybody watching or listening that at this point that. And Lennon knows the character. I can totally see where you got that from because you immediately followed up the talking about the light with the actual the guard itself. So I was like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, I got to try and remember that. So anybody listening is like, oh well, we're trying to give you the most correct information. So my question is to follow up on that. What are your thoughts where it's at, Daddy? Do you have any issues with Gladiator? Is it something that you have personally played yourself and you think that is What are your thoughts?
The only sort of experience I have with Gladiator is having him as a teammate. Funny enough, I play with two fellas that play quite a lot of Gladiator, Uber Dome, and I'm not gonna lie, I can't remember the other guy's name. But having Gladiator as a teammate in fours, there's literally the only thing useful about the Gladiator at that point is the toe stab, and that's it.
Yep.
Toe stab, heavy. That's it. That's literally it. There's nothing else a Gladiator can do. If he tries to do anything else, say hello to Revenge. That's literally it. I don't play Gladiator personally, but I've heard everyone complain that his temp guard is utter trash. Or that only a ganking tool, and if he's not going to be used as a ganking tool when you see somebody select him, it's a throw pick more or less.
I think it does. It's when you said that, like, it's a thrill pick. I think you actually bring that into a lot of perspectives. I think some people will play Gladiator just to kind of style on other individuals. Like I said, it's and from my perspective, I very rarely play Gladiator personally, but when I do, I do it terribly. But I know what he's capable of, and at the end of the day, like I play him when I do play him to try and get better at him so that I can do those stylized moves. Like I talked about the punish earlier. It's you have to be on point with the skewer punish when you're out of stamina. If you miss the timing, and if you're good enough, from what I understand, I've never seen it done successfully, but if as I understand it, if you do it properly, you can almost indefinitely do that skewer punish on wake up if you do it 100% on point. But it takes very, very, it takes a lot of skill, takes a lot of really good timing to do that effectively. And of course, repeatedly, somebody's going to screw something up. So that's what I look at when I think of like options for the game. Yes, there are other heroes that can do that a little easier, like a Raider out of stamina. If he has a wall, he can get that 90 damage punish from the heavy to the zone. That's 40, 50 damage. You've got the 90. But with the Gladiator, he doesn't need a wall, but he does need more skill and better timing to get that 90 damage punish. But it is insanely, like, it's multitudes more impressive for a Gladiator player to successfully pull off that punish than it is for a Raider to throw somebody into a wall and get that 90 damage, side heavy, side zone. It's you know what I'm saying? So I like watching people play Gladiator because it is that the really good Gladiators, people tend to have problems with that because it's a hero that's not played very, very often. Just from my personal experience, it's not a hero that's played super often, and when they do play it, they don't play it to its strengths as much as they probably could. So not to get too far into this. So yes, and of course, Light Boogie is somebody who comes to mind who currently mains Glad, and I know that you guys know him. I watch him a lot too. He's a great guy. We've had him on the show before. Fatal, I want to get your follow up on this before we wrap this up. What is your thoughts on where Gladiator is currently, your personal experiences or otherwise on his strengths and whatnot?
I mean, I think Lennon nailed it. Like everything you can learn about him.
Pretty
There's
much.
a few things that I do want to mention. That's like like I think his deflect is really bad for an assassin. You
Yeah.
can easily hyper armor through that.
Wait,
Like
wait, wait.
you have,
What is, just so anybody watching or listening, what is his current deflect punish right now?
so when you deflect it, it goes into a skewer, but the skewer, unlike other deflects, the skewer can be punished by chains and stuff like that. Like there's an assortment of moves that can make that skewer kind of unoptimal to be doing,
Like
right?
a Zerker's hyper armor, for example, is gonna
Berserker's
punish
hyper
that pretty
armor.
bad. And right now,
Yep.
and that skewer for alpha deflect does give a bleed, correct?
Yeah, it gives a bleed. I mean, like it does flow into his kit, which I actually really like it in concept, but as I said, it feels unfinished, unrefined like other assassins deflects. And there's just like an assortment of things that's just like what was it? His toe stab. Everyone talks about the toe stab, right? But his toe stab is like it's underpowered. It's the recovery is huge. You
Yes.
dodge that toe
Yeah,
stab, easy GB. So you're trading. You're offering 10 damage. Like the trade is like you're like kind of like 10 damage for a risk of like 30 damage, right? Or wall punish.
Hmm.
But so he has a lot of things like that that really does make him kind of not a good hero to play. But going off of what you were saying, with the punishes, I do think that Gladiator does show some really cool hero designs where it's like he has a lot of nuance.
he's got a
Like
lot.
kind of like pre-reworked Valkyrie. He has a lot of nuance just like that, where like if you know the Gladiator, if you know his kit, you know how to optimize it. There's a lot of things you can do with him to really show off and get some really cool chains going, like you said with the blockable, the skewer,
Hmm.
on like startups and things like that. Like so also like there's a lot of things like that that I really do enjoy watching people do with him. But playing him yourself is just kind of boring. And
You got to work hard to get those punishes and everything, but you got to be on point almost all the time. You make one mistake and it's right. It's kind of
eh,
harsh.
Hmm.
yeah, and he kind of serves right now. He serves as sort of like a noob stomper because of that. His unblockables, his zone attack. But I do feel like if Ubisoft did a better job at teaching players the idea of bash attacks and dodging bash attacks,
Mm.
people will more often start to learn that his zone attack is really not that great, except for being an option select, which is really powerful as an option select. But from default, all you have to do is just wait for that unblockable sign, and you got to dodge that unblockable that zone or
Very,
that
very reactable.
Yeah.
yeah, very reactable, that zone or that toe stab. You can react to both of those and just But that's really all I can add. Like he's just not that great of a hero. Has potential, but
So
yeah,
So what I want to follow up with that, and that's going to lead to our next question on that. Before we wrap up with this segment, were Gladiator to receive a buff or change? What should it be? Before I get to that, I want to piggyback off of what you said in terms of the recovery, the toe stab recovery. I wanted to mention that myself personally. Is that his recovery is very, very long. I don't think it's quite as long as Shugo whiffing a Demon's Embrace, but it's a long enough where you can dodge it and pretty much you can punish it with a lot of different options. However, the good thing about that is that you can you can basically follow up toe stab, or rather, toe stab can be a follow up to almost any attack or any chain that you throw out there, and it'll catch a lot of people off guard. That when I play Gladiator, that's the way I do it. Is that, and again, like I said, I play it terribly, but I'll throw out a chain, I'll throw out an attack, and I'll follow up. And when I'm done with the chain, I throw a toe stab out. It's almost free damage because most people are not quite ready for it at that point. It's like a mind game at that point. You've got people that are gonna, it's almost either they're going to dodge preemptively, and you can punish that with a guard break, or you can throw out the toe stab as a follow up, and you get a little bit of extra damage on it. It's not much, but it's a little bit. It's better than nothing. And you guys have everybody has mentioned the zone attack. I see a lot of gladiators that are new to Gladiator throwing that zone attack out a lot, and it's because a lot of players, like Fatal has said, simply can't react to it, and maybe it's because they are not taking the time to utilize the training mode that's providing to them to dodge, to try to work out dodging that. You can go into training mode, and I try to mention this in a lot of our podcasts. If you have a problem with a mix-up or a specific attack, go into training mode. That's what it was meant to be. Utilize the tool that's provided to you. While I think that Ubisoft could do a better job in some ways of teaching how to do things, that training mode is your best option and your best tool right now to get specific hands-on experience with something that you have trouble with. Gladiator Zone, put it in there, tell the bot to do exactly the Gladiator Zone. It's going to keep doing the Gladiator Zone until it runs out of stamina, and you can turn the stamina off to where it just keeps doing it. So I do see a lot of Gladiators doing that and kind of abusing that. It is very good for a parry option select for sure. And when you get Revenge as an example, a lot of people, even if they're higher skill, I see spamming that as often when you have Revenge as well, because it's, you got the shield. There's not a lot of room for taking too much of a punish off of it if you're in a 1v1 situation. So moving forward, my question was, if the Gladiator were to receive a buff or change, what should it be? I want to follow up with you, Fatal, since you're on a roll, and then we'll come back to the rest of the cast.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is, if Gladiator were to receive a buff or change, what do you believe that should be? And I'll speak with you, and then I'll follow up with LeninCat and then Daddy.
Well, I mean, I'll say the obvious ones, and I'll let the others give me some really interesting ones. Like, I think the first thing we'll probably suggest is maybe not 600 ms light chains, something faster, like 500. I'd say 500 is fine, just because he has the mix of a toe stab, and other stuff to go along with that chain. Yeah, 500 is a good start. Maybe not make the recovery for toe stab so large. Like, I would argue that toe stab shouldn't allow people to dodge and guard break him. I feel like it would either have to be a dodge attack or something faster, like another bash. For like a more even trade, like, Conquer dodging bash would be 15, so it's not like he's not risking 10 damage for 30 or 25. I'd say, like, as a start, those two changes would be great. And of course, maybe a slight health buff, and because I think he has, I don't know his health, but I think it's higher than most assassins, right? Because the idea is he's a tankier assassin.
I think it's 120. I think it's just 120, like middle of the line.
Okay,
I could be
feel
wrong about that. I haven't played him forever, but yeah.
I like the original concept for Gladiator is that he's this big, he's sort of like this big hunter that's sort of like a lion. Lions are huge. They're enormous, but they're stealthy. So I feel like they should go back to that concept and maybe give him, like, higher health pool, maybe 130, 135 or something. And of course, make sure his stamina game is a lot better, because most heroes in the game can't pressure when their stamina is just constantly running out. So that's also an air start. But for now, like, those are all I can really think to suggest, because I'm not a huge Gladiator player, but I know that a lot of Gladiator mains would probably agree with what I'm suggesting.
All right, Lennon, your thoughts?
So actually, just because I thought of them, two more quick things I want to mention about Gladiator. His heavies have 100 MS guard break vulnerability, which also makes them pretty much like an option select on an indicator. It's very, very hard to feint to guard break, even soft feint to guard break. His heavy parry attempts, or his just he parries with heavy, right? So there's that, and his dash attacks are okayish, good damage, but they're very like punishable when blocked by external teammates. A lot of these strengths of his option select and his heavy parries are seen in 1v1 where he's an extremely safe. You never throw out a toe stab. You barely throw out a light. You might throw out some heavy feints, but it's mainly just zones and parrying. Um, but as for what I'd like to see for Gladiator, make the shield bash good. I'd like to see it bumped up to 500 MS and have like branching options. Not necessarily a guarantee of damage, but just any sort of follow up. Skewer, heavy's already there, so that's whatever.
So
light
wait.
attacks.
So your thought process on that to kind of give a parallel to this is almost like using that as sort of like a stunning tap in certain terms of where it like enhances the entire kit. So it's like the center point for chains and mix ups.
So the one thing that I was alluding to previously is I really would appreciate it if Ubisoft would introduce a mechanic where you can't have a stun reapplied to you while a current stun is lingering. I think that shit is real annoying. It feels like a no-brainer to me.
Yes.
I don't know why
Chat.
it hasn't been done. Post it on Reddit, Twitter, wherever you gotta. I really want that to happen. I think it'd be like the no-brainer middle ground where it still
Diminishing
keeps
returns.
the offense good, but it doesn't keep it to be like my screen's white for 60 seconds in a row, right? Like,
at least diminishing returns or something, right? At least diminishing returns. Like the second one gives like a half or a third, and then the third one doesn't do shit.
Something, right? Just throw us a bone, right? Like I think it's really annoying, and so that's why I would keep the stun on the shield bash, but make it as sort of like a pressure mix-up tool where you have options to beat everything. You have an option to beat an early dodge with a skewer or whatever. You have an early a quick branching light attack where you have to essentially guess to block it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that would be coupled with that, and not a lot of people know this, I told you about it, Norgoz, but you can nerf stun on PC if you play on nighttime maps, or if you have render scaling set to 100 and anti-aliasing off. I think it is. I might be wrong about that.
Anti-aliasing off. Yeah.
Render scaling is definitely the important one. It's insanely noticeable. I sent you some clips, Norgoz. You can definitely vouch for the difference.
Yeah, I saw. It's insane. Literally, to give you guys a visual on this, it's basically picture the initial tap, the initial daze. It like flashes white on the screen, and you picture that as like 100%, or like a 90% vision, right? You have the render scaling properly, which render scaling should be at 100 unless you're trying to descale everything down, which kind of complicates everything. That's a talk for a different story or a different show. But you do that, you turn anti-aliasing off, like you guys have said, and basically you have a 90% or a 10% visual. You have 10% visibility versus 90% visibility. It basically flips it almost like 100, like a 180. Like it's insane. We'll have to get you guys some pictures.
Yeah. So and then the last thing, like Fatal said, I mean, reflex guard. I don't know if he said it. He might have. I might have missed it.
I didn't say it. I forgot that.
But yeah, reflex guard. Please bring it to 1,000. I feel like that has been so long overdue for so many seasons. Give it to Shinobi too, even though I think he's a piece of shit character, right?
But wait. So that brings us to: do you remember what the justification was? And I'm not trying to throw B under the bus here. Like there was a justification that they gave for leaving it at 500. Do you remember what that was?
I really don't.
I think it was something having to do with them having like the strongest zone or a strongest punish or something like that off of it.
That's some bullshit.
Something like that.
They're justifications.
I could be wrong, and I could be completely wrong on that. I'm going by memory. I could be completely wrong, so don't quote me on that.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I mean, it becomes one of those things where it's like, hero design versus actual practicality.
Yeah.
It's like why they made Shikoki's attacks only have ends with heavies instead of having a heavy to light chain and things like that. Like, I think if it's better for the game, don't do it. Like you don't need these things. So I'd say like it's one of those things that need to be standardized, kind of like dodge. When they had the concept of some heroes dodge faster, some heroes dodge longer, that kind of thing. Uh, it's just not healthy for the game. I think everyone would rather have it standardized.
And we'll get further in depth into that. That's going to be part of our next episode that I definitely want to get into, like really really deep on the discussion of standard versus reflex, because there's so much into that discussion that whether or not deflex would be removed or whether they would be changed. If we made everything reflex versus standard and so on and so forth, and how that would affect punishes and whatnot. Before we get too deep into this, I want to come back to Daddy. What are your thoughts? What are your final thoughts on that? If they were to buff or change Gladiator, what from your perspective, what would you say? What would you think?
500 millisecond neutral lights, maybe a 400 millisecond combo finisher for the
he does have 500 neutral.
I don't play Gladiator.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't know my arse from the element.
Okay, I stand corrected then. What I was saying before is that I thought you were talking about the chain lights, the 600 millisecond chain lights versus the 500. Now I've just confused everybody.
Oh.
Shit.
All right. Yeah.
My bad. That's my bad. So anyway,
his beginner lights in every chain are 500 ms. If you throw a second light in any chain, it's 600. Every single one.
Oh well.
Thank you.
Those lights bring those down to 500 ms.
Thank you.
So it's only real use, if you can call it that, is somebody who's parry hungry might try to parry a heavy feint and you get a guard break, right? That's
right.
about it.
So
if a light attack 600 milliseconds, you're asking to be light parried. Please.
You really are. It's like Highlander.
Yeah.
Highlander has 600 neutral freaking defensive lights. Like nobody throws that really to throw it out there unless they're trying to get a crush encounter, and even at that point. So I want to throw this out there to piggyback off of that. I have noticed, as you guys may have noticed, that over time, the majority of assassins have been getting 400 millisecond combo lights, and I've seen that being sort of what I've said as soon as I noticed it. They started changing. They did it to Zerker a long time ago, and then they did it with what is it, Aramusha at one point. I think they did it with Orochi. I think they did it as well. So you have 400 millisecond lights, and you got Nusha from neutral. You get 400. So you have assassins that have normalized neutral or primarily combo lights. Nusha is an enigma that we won't go into.
Nusha does have 500 ms neutral. She just has 400 chain. Yep.
Okay, I'm staying corrected. I stand corrected. So my point is thank you for keeping me honest. Is that the point is that with combos you're seeing 400 millisecond combo lights normalized across the board, and for assassins
they definitely want chains. They definitely want chains to be more rewarding. Either just as a mix-up enforcer or as just this quick option where it's so fast that certain players will feel that they have to read to punish it, or some players who are speed demons on Adderall, right? Like they have like 130 ms reaction speed. They'll just either block it no problem or they'll parry it, right? Like they don't, they're monsters. Those people are out there, and they generally, I think, want to make chains more rewarding because neutral offense in For Honor is, I want to say, almost everything in some senses. You'll find that a lot of the characters in the game that are good on a 1v1 level have great neutral play. Warden, Berserker, before the nerf, Black Prior, where you couldn't punish his bash basically at all. Those characters were notoriously good for 1v1. Because they had those neutral pressure tools, and they were hard to punish, or their damage was really high, and they wanted, they're taking their risk, they wouldn't get too retaliated on. But yeah, I just want to mention that in passing.
Oh, good stuff. I really appreciate it. And so, right now, it's a good point to reintroduce our cast. I'm your host, Norgoz, and we start this show. This is the Weekly Warcry. You're watching or listening to the Weekly Warcry. We're here live 7 p.m. Pacific every Friday. I am joined by Daddy Law, Fatal-Feit, and LeninCat, all people that you recognize as content creator or as competitive player alike, all very knowledgeable individuals about the game. Really, really appreciate you all being here. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. You can catch the VOD here on Twitch afterwards if you want to go back and watch everything. I do post everything on YouTube a week later. and I do that intentionally. So the YouTube does have a playlist, and it is a week behind. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. We're going to be talking here shortly about Trash Talk, and I wanted to thank you guys again. It's been a great show so far. This is a segment that I know a lot of you guys have been looking forward to. I know. Just looking at Daddy. He's ready for it. He's ready for it. So I wanted to do something that was a little fun, and we were supposed to talk about this a little bit more in the pre-show about how we were supposed to have fun, some fun trash talking, and unfortunately, I failed to mention that. So I guess fuck it, we're doing it live. So I'm gonna start with the king of trash talk, Daddy. I gotta. Do you remember that time that Bleach said that my beard was better than yours?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm
So
gonna have to evaluate that live right now. Give me
well, that's all I have to say. There is that that's the setup and the punchline right there. But
I know I don't mind being compared to a budget Gimli. It's fine.
oh, exactly. Okay, so see, that's what I'm talking about. That's fun, right? There's nothing wrong with being among friends and sitting around couch co-op and trash talking back and forth and whatnot. And by the way, the follow up that Daddy had to Bleach saying that live on the show was pretty damn good. There's a clip of that on Daddy's channel. You should probably go watch it. It was a pretty fun time. So I digress. So again, the context here is, trash talk is part of every game where you've got PvP involved. And it's something that, like I said, couch co-op, with your friends is kind of where you throw down the gauntlet and the gloves come off and you just say whatever comes to mind and you're among friends and you're just there to have fun, right? And it's something that I think that's healthy. That's really good time. I know I did it growing up. We would hand the controller back and forth. Even years ago, even just recently, we'd play Street Fighter or we'd play Injustice, excuse me, or we'd play whatever fighting game we were playing, and we would go back and forth, and we'd hand the controller off to whoever loses. Same thing with any, a racing, anything that's competitive, anything where you win, lose, or draw. You'd have like 6, 7, 8 people, and you got 4 controllers, and bada bing, bada boom. You pass it around whoever, so that's a fun time. But the question is, however, there are many players who think you're Trash Kid and KYS, which who doesn't know, that means kill yourself. That doesn't mean keep yourself safe. That's people who say that are full of shit, and they know that they've said something that's wrong. It's fake news. People who say that know that they're wrong, and they're trying to say that because they're trying to dial that back, and they don't want to get in trouble. Unfortunately, that's not what it means, and they know that. I've been told to do that too, which is actually fun. So I'm not encouraging that, by the way. That's a joke.
Personally, when people type KYS to me, I read it as keep yourself safe.
Exactly. You have to.
See.
But anyway, my point is that there's some trash talk I would strongly condemn, but it can be fun. At what point does it become just petty, toxic, and excessive? I'm gonna throw this one immediately to the king of For Honor trash talk, the daddiest of laws. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, instantly, I think that the obvious part is there's obvious no-go areas. There's no racial stuff. There's no religious stuff. There's no homophobic stuff. Nobody says stuff like that if they're, talking trash for a bit of fun. As soon as they venture into that kind of world, it's instantly, it's not trash talk. It's just people being toxic pricks, more or less, realistically. But as well as that, it also comes down to the manner in which it's being put forward. Like, just say for example, if I was looking, it was like, oh, you arsehole, send like a sarcastic manner in a jokey way, or if I was looking, you'd be like, fuck off, arse, away. Like in that manner, right away, it seems a lot more serious. But then again, those things aren't present whenever it comes to the in-game chat of For Honor. I've personally experienced people typing the hard F as a homophobic slur, the hard and everything, everything under the sun. I've been typed at like that in the For Honor game chat, and then that's not trash talk. That's people just being toxic because they're
just for the sake of doing it,
just for the sake of doing it, of course. But to me personally, as long as it's not a racial slur, homophobic or religious, anything goes. It's open season. It's open game. Because you're playing a video game, you talk shit.
Yep.
That's how it goes. I personally, every weekend, I go to my best friend's place. He's got 2 PCs. We do a LAN, and we talk the biggest amount of shit ever. That man said I resembled a pot noodle that has been used as a fleshlight. I've never been roasted that hard in my life, and this man's my best friend. Like, who says that to somebody and calls him a friend? Apparently, I do. Like what the Christ? Anything goes realistically, but then again, that also brings in the whole manner of it depends on the person. Like, is somebody sensitive? Is somebody not sensitive? A great example of this, I won't mention names, obviously out of respect and stuff, but there's been times in my chat where I would make a joke, whether it be like something political or something, I'd build a wall and shit, and
Yeah.
someone will get offended at that right away, and type something like, "Oh, I'm disagreeing with this because you're making this certain individual seem like they're a joke when they've clearly done nothing wrong." And I'll reply with "triggered," and then they'll get super mad right away, and I'll sort of lead off of that and start roasting people.
Well, that's that right
But
there. I
then
mean,
they start
usually the
getting
word
pretty offended.
triggered will also, I mean, effectively like that kind of upsets people to begin with. But you're
Oh,
not
of course.
you're not wrong when you point that out. If somebody's like literally that's what they're doing. I mean, there's almost no other word sometimes to describe it. Like you said, like sometimes I try to stay away from. I think we all try to stay away from politics and content. But when it comes down to political jokes, I think that's fair game. There's a difference between a joke that is related, and that's a joke that's politically related, and there's a difference between a joke that's politically fueled. There's a distinctive difference between taking a stance politically and just making a joke about something that is something that everybody memes about. So yeah, and I think that what you were alluding to is that people have to have thicker skin is kind of what you're getting at, essentially, correct?
The main thing that I'm trying to put forward is you're on the internet, don't get upset. Like you're literally it may sound a little off topic, but you're literally on a platform, the interwebs, where you can literally find anything. You can hire hitmen, for Christ's sake, if you look hard enough. Literally, you can. And you're going to get upset about people talking shit.
And we're certainly not encouraging that, by the way. Just
Oh, of course. Like I've had people even come into my chat and say, "Yo, look at this guy. He looks like a fucking what? He looks like a homeless version of Sheamus off of WWE that took crack for a week and went on a massive binge." And I turn around being like, "Actually, it's been 2 weeks. Why do you think it looked this bad?"
I was gonna say, I knew where this was going.
it's all a bit of fun, and
Yeah.
if you're the kind of person that enjoys a bit of trash talk, you bounce off of each other right away. And
Right.
that's where I've built, a character off of my stream and my community. I talk a lot of shit, and people know me for the amount of shit I can talk and how well I can talk shit. But I've offended a lot of people because of how, thin-skinned some people can be.
Yes.
But I've also brought a lot of people in from how thick-skinned some people can be, and they sort of enjoy it. So it depends on the person, and you just don't go near any extremely offensive stuff, such as, like I said, racial, homophobic, religious,
etc. Right, and I think that's all really good, fair points. You've got, I think to wrap all that up in a very tight knit way, so that everybody kind of understands where Daddy's coming from. He's an entertainer. I know that some people have been offended by that. I know that some people have given him a little bit of backlash on some of the things that he said in the
called it over
past.
Twitter and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't want to go too far into that one, but you know where I was coming from with that. Exactly. So, I know all about that shit too. So, the point is that he's an entertainer. He's there to have a good time. I do the same thing. I've never seen Daddy Law. I've never heard Daddy Law say anything personal about somebody before they've gotten personal with him. And I'm the same way. Is that I will say things that may be fun or may be funny, but I've never said that somebody's a bad person or a terrible trash player. If just because they beat me or they outplay me or they start if they start talking shit, and I'll be like, yeah, they're being kind of toxic. If they get really excessive, like, okay, maybe they're just being an asshole at this point, but they kind of bring it upon themselves at that point. That falls back onto, there's a point where there's a stopping point. But to follow up on here, to move this right along, to follow up, LeninCat, you and I had a really in-depth discussion about this during the week. I would love to hear your thought process on the levels of toxicity in terms of where does it stop at, and in terms of trash talk. When does it become petty and excessive?
So where I come in, I'm gonna bring this back straight to For Honor, and this applies to I think many competitive games, but especially ones with smaller bases. Um, I really have a pet peeve of when trash talk is used as a means of dismissing people's viewpoints or opinions or whatever on
Like
on a given
credibility?
topic, right? Yeah, or it's used to attack credibility. That bothers me to no end.
Mhm.
I am 100% like Daddy was what Daddy Law, sorry, was saying, is I'm 100% like your friends. Like all bets are off. Like whatever the hell you want to say, no problem. I don't care. Like my friends talk relentless shit to me, and that's totally fine. Um, and I think something that I really want to clarify for people who might not like kind of get that kind of dynamic is it's a show as backwards as it is, it's a show of respect in a way. You have a mutual
Interesting
understanding
perspective.
that you have this mutual understanding that I can say anything to you that I want, and you can say anything to me that you want, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we understand boundaries if we're good friends, and we learn them if we fuck up, right? Like that's fine. But like I said, specifically with For Honor, it's the thing that gets me to no end is when like you just take clips out of context and it's like used as a means to dismiss somebody's opinion. Bugs the shit out of me to no end. I imagine Fatal probably kind of feels similar because he's been around that sphere of the game with me. It happens nonstop. It's definitely there. It's whatever, right? Like if you're in the sphere of the game, you definitely understand where you are, and what people think of you. Most people do, but I definitely understand the like just not like to random people. It's like whatever, right? Like if you want to call me the messiah of rodents or like a baby shit eater, whatever, right? It just I've been called everything under the sun too. Like Fatal was memeing at the start of the podcast, right? He's like, Lennon never plays outside of 4 stacks. Some guy said that in chat like 4 days ago. So those sorts of things happen, right? And it's like whatever, you just kind of have to let it brush off. There's nothing wrong with it. But some people aren't like that. They aren't ready for it,
No.
and that's why I'm firmly in the realm of just like if I know you and I know who you are and I respect you in a sense, I will talk shit to you. Like it's just gonna happen. But yeah, like Fatal. You can say whatever you want. It's up to you.
What are your thoughts, Fatal?
I mean, I'm one of those players who don't really have, a toxic bone in my body. I'm not really one for shit talking or anything like that. But like I completely understand. Like I completely agree with what Lennon is saying, and Daddy Law, where it's like, with your friends and stuff, like all bets are off. Like just go ahead and say what you want, and like, cause people can say whatever they want to me, and I don't really care. Like I'll laugh at it if it's a really good one.
Uh-huh.
Things like that. Like I like to keep a lot of screenshots of like really good roast on me. I've heard it all. I love it. I have a
I
whole
love
folder
it
for
too.
it. It's great, and things like that. It actually kind of builds your relation with people much better if you accept it. Now the things that like not to repeat everything they're saying, but the things that like actually gets me, it's not so much toxicity, but when it hits the level of like you're just not being practical, like that hurts me more than someone just talking shit to me. Like if you're someone in chat, like if we're playing 4v4 and you're like so toxic, you're just like leaving your character AFK just to talk shit. I'm actually
Oh
upset
God.
because you're leaving a whole team
Yep.
with one person off a whole team, so now there's just only 3 people fighting. Like that thing gets me,
That's like
and,
worse than dodging a game.
it's worse than dodging a game. And it's like I had that just earlier. I was just playing with my brother, and there's this guy who's lagging on my team, and everyone's saying, "Hey man, just get out the game, please. You're destroying the game." And he just sits there for 5 minutes just typing, and then he finally leaves, and ultimately the team has to suffer for it. Um, things like that, and another thing that gets me is like, you know what? You can call me bad names and everything, but if you start main shaming, if you start telling people like, oh, you're just a raider, you suck because you play raider or something like that, like that bothers me a lot because I think it's like you're limiting yourself if you just like
Mhm.
all you do is target switch, all you do is play this or that. You're really limiting yourself, and I feel like that's not good for the community. That's not good for players to have. That's not a good mindset at all, and so that affects me because I feel like it actually affects the game rather than just name calling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you have a lot of things like that in the community. Like I guess like you can say like name calling and everything like competitive toxicity doesn't bother me, but if I go on Reddit and read half the things they say, that bothers me. It's one of those things, I guess.
Okay, so I think that we're all, we agreed. I think a lot more than what I was expecting. Same thing happened with our last show. We agreed a lot more than I was expecting. I try to fit a lot of different personalities and perspectives into things, and I think we have agreed on a lot of things. We've also disagreed on a few key points, and I like that. I like to have a back and forth discussion about these things, and so I think that we do agree. One thing we do agree on when it comes to trash talk, though, is that at the end of the day, there is a point where it becomes petty and excessive, and there are certain situations where it's appropriate. And one of those is mainly if you're in, like if you're in the middle of a scrim, as an example, offline or something. I imagine that's going to go like that's all balls to the wall. Everybody's going to say whatever it is that they feel like saying because they're among people that know each other, and it's to be expected. But if you're in matchmaking and you're just throwing it out there and you're like, oh, you're trash kid, and I always come back to the iced tea, go fuck your mother with the controller. That's just where you need to just kind of say like, okay, you need to take a step back, all right, buddy. I mean, I may be from Kentucky, but that's not where this needs to go, okay? Like you need to chill the hell out. So, that being said, I mean, at the end of the day, couch co-op among friends, that's fair game. In matchmaking, maybe tone it down a little bit, or be able to do what I call as from a stand-up comedian's perspective, be able to read the crowd, read the room, so to speak, and
Could I add something else to it as well? 'Cause
absolutely
it just sort of came to my head
go
there.
for it.
A lot of people don't realize that some content creators are playing a character as well,
Yes.
and that this is sort of to like defend Clutch a little bit because recently over the past couple of days, I've had a couple people pop into my chat being all, you know, oh this Clutch guy or whatever, he's an asshole to everybody and all this here. Like I've heard from lots and lots and lots of people that he's a super cool and decent dude, off stream and whatnot, and I'm pretty sure Fatal and Lennon could probably vouch for that more than likely. The amount of people that get offended by that baffles the shite out of me. Like, why?
I mean, people
It's
take
clear
things
to
at
see,
face value, right? Like it's just kind of you wear, the saying you wear your heart on your sleeve. I
Mhm.
think people just naturally, a lot of people assume that, like it's just kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there aren't two separate entities or whatnot, right? Like
Mhm.
it happens. It's just across the board, right? That's
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
exclusive to Clutch by any means.
Of course
Uh,
not.
Oh, no,
No,
I've had
and
half
some
people say
people
that.
and some people know him more in depth than others. Some people don't really know him that well personally. At the first workshop I went to in February, I got to talk to him a bunch. We were all testing and playing and whatnot. Yeah. So I mean, it's you learn people differently in different situations, and I think that streamer viewer dynamic only lets you see one. You don't really see the other, and I think
Yeah,
that's kind of why people
very true.
intuitively understand as the, that kind of thing. It just happens.
well, I didn't want to bring this up, but this falls up exactly with what you guys are describing. So, as an example, there have been at least two or three people that have been called out by some. I do not want to hear names. I don't want to hear names about who this
Mm-hmm.
person is or anything like that. This is not trying to disrespect anybody. I'm trying to say that there have been situations where someone has called out individual streamers because they play against them, and I understand they're also a content creator, that has, said, hey, this person said this, that, and the other thing. And they're not taking the time to get to know the person to understand that, hey, and I know taking the things out of context, you know what I'm saying? Like me, if I talk shit about somebody, if they don't know me, they're probably gonna think, hey, that Norgoz guy's a freaking asshole. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Could I say the roast that I made on them at least?
mm,
Do
I,
it.
It's a good one.
I'll allow it. Do it.
fine,
Norgoz.
fine.
Okay. So I more or less turned around to him and said he's sweating like a pedophile in a playground.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I forgot what it was. Okay. That's our lowbrow joke for the day. We're trying to stay on the air. This is a family show. So anyway, we have a show to get to. Now I'm sweating. And this is anyway. So my point is though is that we've had people that will take things out of context. They misunderstand things. I think that we brought a really good important thing to the table where someone will take something out of context and they will literally go out of their way to try and discredit someone. They will try to destroy that person's reputation, and it's gotta at some point you got to say, okay, maybe you should take a look at that individual, get to know them, because exactly what was said was, if you don't get to know about this person and who they are, and you talk trash about them, that's bullshit. That's a paraphrase of what they'd said. And so if you're trying to trash somebody else and you're not doing the same thing, which I've called them out for it too. So I know that this is not going to get the best optics politically within the community. I recognize that this is something that some players are not going to like. I don't like drama. I personally don't. That's why I'm being very vague and giving examples. You know what I'm saying? It's something that I know that the development team is probably going to look at this and be like, "Geez, this Norgoz guy, he's trying to doing this and that. Like, I don't think we want to look at this guy anymore." You know what I'm saying? If they're paying attention to the show. So I want everybody to know who's watching or listening that it is something. I see the big picture on that. I understand where I'm at with that. But it is something that's within the community, and a lot of people have seen that. They've seen that behavior. They know what's going on, and it is something that I think it is important to put a picture frame around and say, these are the situations that we want to try to avoid, because everybody on both sides of the aisle, whether they feel insulted, they're insulting people, whatever it is that on both sides of the aisle, we all can agree that at the end of the day, we say the same things just in different ways sometimes. People will argue back and forth. They say the same things, but in different ways, and you're just cross-talking. And you're saying, well, I'm not trying to offend you. You shouldn't try to offend me. Basically, in the simplest sense of the terminology. And I think we should, that's what I would like to do with this podcast, is bring everybody together. We've had several different guests from different backgrounds, from casual, from the nicest casual player to the most toxic people that we can come up with, and maybe we haven't gotten there quite yet. But I mean, we've got a lot.
Haven't.
You know,
you got to go a lot deeper than that.
And I'm probably, if you're toxic for the sake of toxic, you're probably not gonna get a spot on this show. I'm gonna tell you that right now. But I do look at things objectively. And that's what this show's about. So,
Is there time I can add one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually a little bit early in this segment. We're gonna take audience questions here very shortly. Fatal. I'm gonna give final thoughts to Fatal. But if you have not already, type !ask. I'll do it in the chat here. !ask. Click on that link if you want to ask a question to the podcast, to anyone individually or us as a whole. Click on that form, type in your name, type in your question, and submit that, because in the next few minutes we're going to be answering some of these questions. Now now some of these may not be appropriate for the cast or whatnot. So if I don't take your question, don't get offended. We have a lot of them here, so I will take the ones that I think are appropriate. We're pressed for time, so feel free, Fatal. Your final thoughts on trash talk.
So I mean, like, we're talking about trash talk, but I was actually very curious about trash play and what people find toxic in, like, gameplay wise, right? So I mean, there's optimal. There's a subset or a majority of the community of For Honor that finds optimal play to be toxic, but, like, on the other end, you do have some, like, examples of toxic gameplay. Like, say you're the last guy alive in Dominion, and the entire enemy team just kills you using bashes, right? They keep you alive just to bash you around. Um, or on the other way around, like, one guy's left and he's just a shinobi. He just runs around the map until the time runs out, and you can't chase him because you're playing Highlanders or something. So, like, I mean, like, there's a lot of examples of stuff like that where, like, I'm very curious about what you guys think of, like, what's going too far in terms of gameplay for matchmaking, or just, in general, and what's not. Because, like, for me, if it's going into, like, if it's wasting my time, I get really annoyed and I find that toxic. But if it's something like you're trying a certain playstyle or something, like if someone plays Shinobi, I'm not gonna find that toxic, right? Um, and if they're playing a Shinobi optimally by basically just whiffing everything and waiting for me to make the mistake, then sure, that's fine. But if you're a Shinobi at the end of a Dominion match and you're just running around so we can't get that last execution, then I find that really annoying. And I want to know your guys' thought on that.
I gotta follow up here before so Fatal, I just realized this. You kind of look like a childhood friend of mine. I haven't said it to you. I just realized I just had a you look like a childhood friend of mine. He's a fucking asshole. So
I am an asshole.
Dude.
So okay, that's fun trash talk, right? But to bring it all back together, so I want to say something about that because you had the question on the table is about trash play, and I think that is an objective thing within itself. Is everybody's gonna see different things. Some people will consider optimal play as trash play. Some people will see, as like you said, running around in circles is trash play. And I think at some point it's going to be a matter of perspective, and it's going to be a matter of the individual situation. Sometimes the only optimal way to win the fight is to run, either do a tactical retreat or to run around in circles, do whatever you can to survive the gank in order to get your players back. That's something that was talked about recently on Twitter, in regards to like running around and whatnot on the comp scene. So I think that I've got a neutral opinion on that, and that's pretty much all I have to say. Is like to kind of keep things in perspective. I guess that's my thoughts. But Daddy or Lennon, you want to use ready to go?
I'll go for it. More or less, just basically what Fatal said. It's not the player's fault if they're playing Shinobi. Like, yeah, everybody hates Shinobi. Fuck that hero. I despise
Even
the hero.
Shinobi mains, I guarantee it.
Like, no one enjoys fighting a Shinobi. Nobody. I can't think of a person that I know that enjoys fighting a Shinobi. But that player's not being toxic or an asshole for playing Shinobi. The hero's built that way, and they enjoy the hero, so they're going to have to play that way if they want to play the hero, of course. But like Phil said, if they're running away at the end of the match so you can't catch them, then they're a prick. The same if people are purposely just only bashing you to be douchebags. All that kind of shit. That's really the only way you can play toxic. Or if it's fuck, I don't know what. Well, it's not really toxic. It's kind of funny, if it's a squad of warlords and they're just sitting on C on that high fort map. That's kind of funny, but at the same time, it can piss you off. But there's no real toxic play style unless it's running away or intentionally just doing one thing that is irritating, like just a squad of people only bashing you, not throwing attacks.
Throwing
That's
a game is one thing people can do.
Oh yeah,
They
I've
intentionally
had
just
that too much.
that's
too
rough.
much.
That's kind of ridiculous. That's worse
Yeah.
than if dodging games are the standard for this podcast. That's worse than the standard. Okay, that's worse than dodging games. We've got two examples now that's worse than dodging games. Sitting there and trash talking the entire time, and then what the hell did you just say, Fatal?
throwing games.
Throwing games. Thank you. Like you throw in the game all entirely. Which basically, if you're sitting there typing, you're throwing the game too. So that's you're doubling down on it. So, LeninCat, your thoughts on quote unquote trash play?
I mean, I
I
don't
know it's
have
a loaded
lot
question.
to say that isn't new here. Like, I mean, I find that shit annoying. I mean, I'm not gonna like, report you for doing it or anything dumb
Yeah.
like that. But I don't know. I just the problem with saying with the term, I guess, trash play is it's completely different definitions depending on who you're talking to. Some people think learning and cheating and treating and unlocking with Nobu zone, so it hit it like 200, 300 ms. That's trash play. People who are stampede charging in that Hero Series to win, Hero Series 1v1 to win, trash play. You know what I mean? So the definition changes with who you're talking to.
Yeah.
I think there are more objective, annoying things and just dumb, like matchmaking things you do just to piss people off, right? I think that shit's annoying, but like, am I gonna report you for it? No, like whatever, dude. Like if you want to, it's your game, right? You have your own fun. Like I don't give a fuck. But I don't. I'm not gonna personally. I'm not gonna like condemn people for it. Like it just doesn't really bother me on that level. It bothers me. Don't get me wrong, but it not on that level to where I'll act upon it in any substantial way. Yeah, I don't have really much else to say on that.
Okay, so to kind of wrap all this in a bundle, I think we're all on the same page in terms of there's definitely some things that take place in game that are a bit of a nuisance, that are annoying. I think we're all on the same page when it comes to, like, I think we're talking about, like, mainly like running around and stuff like that. Yeah, it's definitely annoying. Sometimes it's optimal, and it depends on who you come across as to whether or not that's something that they're going to be upset about or pissed off about. I personally, I think I can. I remain kind of neutral on this, but I think it is a little annoying to me if somebody, like, runs away. I had a game as an example. Somebody who was they were playing Warden, they were critical, and they were just literally, they ran across the map, and I just couldn't come up. I just couldn't get them, and they were doing what they could do to stay alive, and I, like an idiot, decided to keep following them. And I was like, I know I'm putting myself in the danger zone, going to their spawn point. I know what I'm doing, but I want to try and get them. But it was they were able to turn around really quickly and start throwing those charges out about the same time somebody else was trying to hit me with something. So I, being the terrible player that I am, ultimately ended up dying, getting myself killed. So it was definitely annoying, though. It was a thing, though. Going back to the Persona, I made fun of that, though. I made it a fun time. I was like, "Oh, come back," But baby, it was a female model warden. So I'm like, "Honey, wait, I love you. I'll take out the trash. Just come back to me, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I had fun with that. So that could be a fun time, sure. But ultimately, yeah, that's definitely, I was definitely annoyed internally, for sure. So
I do want to add, I think it really depends on the mode too.
sure.
Like if you're in 1v1 and you have like a health lead by like one conk bash and you're just running around like sprinting. I mean, if it's a tournament and there's $10,000 on the line, I encourage you to do it. Absolutely, no problem doing it. But if it's like a fucking game, like, come on, dude. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Whatever. You want to win, but that's exactly why I don't play duels. So yeah. I mean, that's that, right? You play what doesn't enable the things you hate.
Yeah, so I think that we've had a lot of good discussions on several different topics tonight, guys. We've talked about, and we've still got a couple more things to do. We've got to get to audience questions, and then my final question that I ask everybody, and we're gonna have to cut this a little short on some of these. We've talked about dodging games, we've talked about removing game modes, trash talk, and we talked about Gladiator in terms of hero balance. So again, I want to take a moment and reintroduce the cast. I'm your host, Norgoz, if you're just now joining us. So we're a little over our second hour into the stream, into the cast, into the show. We've got Daddy Law, we've got Fatal-Feit, and we've got LeninCat all right here to discuss meaningful discussions on community-driven topics. And we've talked about those 4 topics, and right now we're getting to audience questions. Right now I've got a few different questions in here, and I've tried to look through these to find the ones that are most appropriate for the cast. And one of the questions is, there's actually a few questions about the competitive scene. I'm going to lump these together. From Papa and Gorkanot, both of them. I'm lumping these two together, so these are paraphrased. Where can we find the big competitive circuits? And is there still a chance for For Honor to perform well in the competitive scene, or has it had its run? And I'm gonna start this one off with Fatal.
What was the first question again?
What do you? Where are the where can I find the big competitive circuits? And is there still a chance for For Honor to perform well in the competitive scene?
So there's the competitive subreddit, right? That's where you can always start your connections and networking and things like that. I actually see a lot of players start off with the subreddit. I see a lot of players joining and saying, like, "Hey, I want to get more competitive. I wonder, where to check out, who to look at, and stuff like that." And a lot of competitive players, or just casual competitive players, like, always chime in and always lead people the right way. But to the second question, I think, like, I always think For Honor has a chance. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but For Honor is always that game that people do want to turn to. Like, For Honor is always that game that's appealing, it's different, it's unique, that people always having an eye on. It's just they're just waiting. The games. They're just, some people are a lot less optimistic. Some people don't see any hope for the game, but we all know that people, the game turns well, people will flock right back. Because I mean, there was the other day or the other month, Sonic Fox actually had an interest in the game. He came into For Glory and he was like, I want to get competitive in this game. I want to get competitive in this game. What's up? Can someone lead me the way? And then, of course, we all warn him, saying like, it's not the time.
No
Maybe
attacking.
no attacking. You still can't attack and things like that. So, but of course, like I do think there's always hope for this game competitively. I think the scene can always grow, can always improve. The game just needs to reach that level, because right now, when you look at 1v1, how the optimal strategy is get the first hit in and just run away for the entire game. Things like that can't fly, and the game can never be competitive if like things like that do exist. So that's my opinion on that.
So I think a couple of examples that I want to throw out there in terms of like where you can find competitive matches. I mean, you've got some of the more commonly known ones. You've got For Honor Arena, you've got For Honor Console, and then there's a lot of randomly, personally, privately hosted tournaments, and that from different people. Like Strawberry hosted a tournament a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I think Strawberry hosted 2 different ones in a couple of weeks from each other.
There's one this weekend as well, if I remember rightly.
Is it?
I think.
I'm not sure offhand, but you guys can probably, the best way to find that out is to all go to Fatal-Feit.com and go to the For Honor section and look at all of those competitive, look at all the competitive tournaments that are there. That's where you can find the majority of these tournaments, guys, is go to Battle-Fi. Mistress has talked about that on the Warriors Den as well, and has echoed that. So that's something that, but I wanted to make sure I threw that out there. Is that kind of what you were going to say too, Fatal?
Yeah, I was gonna say like definitely check out Mistress. Check her out on Twitter. Like she's always shouting out tournaments and stuff. Like she's huge on the competitive scenes, and she's always trying to bring it forward and trying to encourage it. So if you let her be the guide, right? Like always follow her. Just check out what she tweets and stuff. She's always ahead of what's going to happen with the competitive scene.
Absolutely, really, really good points there. If follow Mistress on Twitter. She is a content creator that's known throughout the community, and she's also recently been hired through Ubisoft to be a product manager for the tournament scene. So that's mainly that's one of the primary focuses that she does. She does. So that's something you can definitely do. Look at Battle-Fi, follow Mistress. That's going to be some of the best and most efficient ways without having to go out of your way to do a lot of stuff. That's where you can check it out. Lennon, you look like you had something you wanted to follow up on with that.
So the only other Discord I think you didn't mention is Warriors Trials. That's run by Raven, who also hosts tournaments.
Okay.
That's a pretty good place to get in. Just into like more organized play. As for top level play,
Raven's awesome too, by the way, guys.
Yep. As for top level play, once you're ready for it, For Glory is waiting for you. I know Fatal's about to cry, and so is Norgoz. You can ask about it when you're ready. It's definitely it's an ingrained community, and it's very much competitive, For Honor focused, and sometimes not. But it's where you'll find the big names. People like Setmix, Clutchmeister. They're all in there. They'll all scrim sometimes, and that's where you can reach them in Discord, whatnot. As for what I feel about the whole competitive scene on the whole, I'm a little bit more pessimistic than Fatal is, for sure. I think spectator mode might be a good boon, but my worry is that it will ultimately be like a too little too late kind of scenario. The game has been out for a long time now. It's well over 3 years. It's over 3 years now, right? No,
about
two and a half.
If you count the alpha and betas, you can kind of say.
Yeah. So it's been around. It's been around long. But the problem is you need to bring in these kind of things. Like you want to get early adopters are like the big thing, right? Because then those people talk to their friends, and their friends talk to their friends, and these sorts of things kind of spread like wildfire. Excuse me. So my worry is that it won't like take off as much as I'd like it to. It's not that I don't want to see it do well. It's that there's a lot of things working against it. And I just hope that something like spectator mode is comprehensive enough and sufficient enough to kind of bring in more people. That's the number one thing. Is like I'm not sure For Honor will ever be like there are $25,000 tournaments every 2 weeks or anything, right? But I think it'll have its place. if it does well, if spectator mode takes hold, so to speak.
We'll see what
That's my
happens with
hope.
that.
They definitely they try to do their part in Ubisoft, and like Fatal mentioned with hiring Mistress, they'll
And that's
shout
a
out
big
tournaments
step in
as
the
much
right
as they
direction.
can. The one thing I have to criticize about UB is I wish they would fund tournaments. I wish we had that kind of like budget going into it. We, and this is no secret, we have asked them for a long time, just anything, right? Like a steel reward.
Yeah.
For all we care, right?
Something. Yeah,
Anything to get like your average Joe to be like, could I win 100,000 steel? That kind of thing. And then it gets them in the door. And
Right.
then once they're in the door, if they hate it, they leave. If they like it, or something in them is like attracted to it, then they stay, and that keeps people in the ecosystem, so to speak. I wish more of that would happen. Newcomers come in every now and then, but it's definitely a slow, it's an IV drip. It's very much an IV drip in that sense.
Okay, so I wanna throw something out there in terms of like I know that this is gonna come up. I know that there's gonna be concern because whenever people talk about the For Glory Discord, there's always a little bit of controversy in there because some people have had good experiences, some people have had bad experiences, and some people have they're anxious to share those and whatnot. I want to throw this out there. I was in For Glory for a very, very long time. I left it because I wasn't competitive. I started going back about the same time that I started doing this podcast, and outside of people asking me directly, hey, do you really not know why Raider has a stunning tap? That's the only question that I got where I was like, wow, you really think so little of me. But no, it was a legitimate question, but they kind of took it out of context. Took it out of context. When I replied back, I didn't get any back and forth or anything. Nobody said anything bad to me. That's not to say that if you join For Glory and you ask a question about something that's very, very basic to the game, like what do I do with X, Y, and Z thing, that you may not get somebody who is like, who's very blunt with you about how to respond. So that's what LeninCat means when he says, when you're ready and you're ready to play at that level, and I'm not saying that people should just be toxic just for the sake of being toxic because somebody doesn't know and they're looking to learn. But at that level of play, that's kind of what people expect, is that when you come into that realm, that you are ready for it, that you are at that point in time, that you are ready to go with that. So I'm not
the master class.
I'm not saying that by any means that if somebody has had a bad experience that it was warranted or anything like that. But what I am saying is that you do have to be prepared that when you go into the realm of competitive, there's going to be feedback that is going to be very blunt and very straightforward if you are not quite ready for that. So
and borderline aggressive in some ways. People are just they assume that you should know something, and they don't really they don't remember what it was like to be new anymore. It's been too long in a way.
Yeah, and what that comes down to is a level of patience or tolerance. And if you're trying to have discussions about high level stuff, sometimes you don't have the time or the patience to kind of go through that. I can kind of understand that to a point. I'm not, but like I said, anyway.
But I think on the whole, if I think a lot of people in For Glory can pick up if you're like a sincere, just asking a question or two, asking what you should do in X scenario, like what do I want to do if I'm playing Gladiator? What do I want to run on feats for Raider? Like, people will answer your question. There's generally not going to be like a hey, get the fuck out of here kind of perspective.
Generally,
yeah, this is usually not going to be that. And
but
then you can ping me and I'll give them shit for it.
Yeah, I mean, like they're not. If you have questions, you just want to, curious about something. Unless it's something like that's something where like, what's the word? That sounds like baiting. Like you're asking like, why does Raider have stunning tap? That sounds like baiting for a lot of us.
Don't phrase the question in a way that's gonna get it like. Don't phrase it confrontationally. I guess that's a way to put it. You might not know what confrontationally means, but you just try.
Yeah,
it'll
kind of
go.
Big
It'll
picture
go
kind of
along.
thing. Yeah, I get it. And I'm not, like I said, I want to be very clear. Like, I'm not saying that if you go in there, you say if you I'm not in by any means saying that if somebody's toxic that they should do that. But I am saying, and I think we're all saying the same thing. When you get into a realm of high level play, people have high expectations. You can go to any game any game. And when you talk about playing at high level play, there's going to be an elitist kind of attitude and mentality. There's going to be some people that are a little that kind of see a bigger picture and have a little more patience when it comes to people that come in and ask questions and stuff like that, like LeninCat, Fatal-Feit, good examples of that. But that doesn't mean that everybody's going to be like that. So it's just something to be prepared for. So Daddy Law, the final thoughts on this is in regards to what we talked about competitively. Do you see the For Honor coming to bigger terms with the competitive scene and that growing?
Well, I guess what I would say on the matter of the competitive scene growing and such, sort of to build on what LeninCat was saying about UB should sort of fund more tournaments, not weekly, obviously for 25K or whatever the fuck, but more so maybe monthly, like maybe a grand or whatever the hell or some shit. But I think there's reasoning behind them not doing that. They personally, at the stage of development For Honor is, they don't feel it's ready for a truly competitive scene. Whether the competitive scene is there or not, and whether it's big or not, I don't visually see from how the devs have been going through it ever since a couple of past tournaments they have funded. I don't visually see them feeling comfortable enough to sort of fund more tournaments and push it towards a more competitive scene. Once they feel it's in a better position, they'll push it towards it. And I think Len and Anfield could agree with that, kind of, in a manner of speaking. You can see that they're not comfortable where the game is in terms of competitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a matter of them having distaste or disrespect towards the competitive scene. It's more so a matter of they want it to be healthier in terms of the play, which also the competitive players want it to be. They want it to be fun, and I'm pretty sure a lot of competitive players aren't happy with how it has to be played at the top level.
Which I think you're also kind of throwing it back at is that goes back to game development. It's they have a direction they're moving with the game, and we're not quite there yet. So I could understand exactly where you're coming from when it comes to when the game's ready for it. We'll see about taking that leap into the deep end. So I see exactly where you're coming from, because they're in the midst of changing the dynamic of the game from more defensive to more offensive. I think we've all seen that. And that's been displayed with the changes that they've made before. So we're running a little late in this segment.
Heroes that they've just sorry, I just the last thing I'll say is just look at the heroes with the DLC that they've released.
Exactly.
So BP, neutral bash,
mm-hmm.
guaranteed light. He's got good offense right away. Hitokiri, variable timing heavies, harder to parry for a lot of people. Hyper armor, a lot of people think it's too early. It may be, it may not be. I won't say anything about the hammer hero. Not that I know anything. Wink, wink, but you can visually see that they're doing their best to get towards that stage, and obviously that they're releasing spectator mode that they're wanting to get towards a more competitive, friendly sort of position that the game's in.
So we're running a little later in this segment than I think than we were expecting to. So I'm gonna take another question from the audience, because we've got several. I want to try and get at least two of them. I'm going to make this very short and simple. I just want to get a yes or no from you guys in regards to, do you think that Renowned, this comes from, I think this is from Lady Lude, do you think that that new players that join in mid to late game should be given Renowned, giving them, feats to have more of an equal chance in fighting at that stage of the game? Yes or no, starting with LeninCat.
It's probably going to be a no from me.
It's going to be a no from me, Chief. All right.
I think the problem is
just looking for a yes or no. We're really late in this segment. I'm sorry, Lenin.
Yeah. I'll keep it short. Giving an in-game advantage just because you're an arbitrary low rep below other people, it's going to promote bad gameplay. It's going to promote bad after you play a while, you kind of develop a rhythm to how you play. You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure.
Well, I think we're talking more about Renowned as opposed to the reputations, the actual Renowned.
Well, yeah. But if you can depend upon having body count at 30 seconds into the game as compared to 60 seconds into the game, it makes a huge difference once you get to higher level play.
Of course.
Once you get to people who start knowing what they're doing, it's going to kind of set you up for failure. That's what I think anyway. So
All right,
I'll
so
let other people.
moving on. We got to keep this short. We're late in this segment. Fatal-Feit, yes or no? Do you think that players should be given renown to help kind of balance the game out mid to late game when they join?
No, for the same reason Lennon said. Like, it's not a good idea.
All right, Daddy.
So actually,
No, we
you're
gotta
qualifying
move
with
on, brother.
mid
I'm
to late-
sorry. We gotta move on.
Okay.
Daddy Law, yes or no?
Yeah.
I would say no, because depending on the hero that joins that the players picked, it could sway the way of the game.
Okay.
Certain heroes have better fates, other heroes don't.
All right,
Better
really.
fates,
Imagine Lawbringer starting with body count. You know, just saying
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I completely understand all fair points there.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to address this. Someone asked something about health pools and whatnot. We kind of talked about that in a few other episodes. A lot of people can kind of agree that the health pools are something that we should maybe potentially look at, and being adjusted and whatnot. That's something we've talked about on a couple of episodes actually. There's a few others that I'm gonna have to skip altogether. I'm sorry, guys. We're running a little late on the show. I try to keep this as close to 2 hours as I can. We're still gonna be a little bit longer with our final question that we have. So that's something that we can maybe hold over. Maybe we can get to you guys next week. Otherwise, come back and see us again next week on that, and we'll see what we can do. So my final question, and I asked this to all of our guests at the end of the show. If you're just now tuning in, I'm Norgoz, your host. I host this show, Weekly Warcry, every Friday at 7 Pacific in the PM. I'm joined by Daddy Law. I'm joined by Fatal-Feit, and I'm joined by LeninCat. I want to ask you guys all individually. Fatal-Feit, we know that you've gone over this before in the past. You've come back to the show to us, and we really appreciate your insights and everything. Fatal-Feit has a YouTube channel where you can see a lot of experiences from earlier in the game, things on from story mode and to one-on-ones and things of that nature. Really, really good content. Really, really good player, even still today, of course. But Daddy Law, I got a question for you, my friend, and the question is, how has For Honor changed your life?
For Honor, for me, has quite, like, literally, without, seeming mush or whatever the fuck, flipped my life upside down entirely. I'm a guy who went into a university course for computing and systems development, networking, programming, fucking database infrastructure, data analytics, and shit. That course ended up being not worth it, out of date, screwed over, left it. Started playing For Honor, started streaming it. The community turned out to be incredible. Started getting to know people, started meeting amazing people, and I went from being this super sort of non-social fella to this extremely social fella with the community. I'm always talking to people all the time, and in general, it's made me a more positive person, a more decent person. I could talk a lot better shit too, and just in general, I'm in a better place now. Like I've been able to support the community in return. I've been able to help people out in my personal life due to the support that I've been given from For Honor, both the community and the devs themselves. It's amazing, and I couldn't be more grateful for Honor as a game.
Good stuff. I'm really glad to hear that. And Daddy, where can we find you? At what point in time can we see you, like your content? I know we've got your Twitch up here and your Twitter and shit. I don't think I got your YouTube properly. So it might be wrong in the end. It might be wrong in the end slide, but ultimately, where can we find
I've
you?
only got literally just a Twitch and Twitter. That's it.
Okay,
11 a.m. BST every morning.
I think I've got you as I think I've got YouTube on there. Then I've got that wrong. So then so there's where you can find Daddy Law. Make sure that you guys drop him a follow. Really, really fun entertainer. And he's actually a pretty good law bringer. He can maybe teach you a thing or two, and if not, he's going to show you a good time one way or the other. So thank you very much for joining us, Fatal and Daddy. Really, really appreciate it. And LeninCat, same question to yourself, my friend. I know you've been around since the very beginning as well. So my question to you again is, how has For Honor changed your life, my friend?
Hopefully, without trying to like bloviate about it, getting the opportunity to play competitively, I broke out, kind of quote unquote broke out, during Hero Series 1v1, where I was still playing Centurion, and I got into the whole competitive sphere of the game as it was growing, and it was pretty fun for a really long time. Eventually, I kind of grew past it. I got other interests. And you can ask anybody who knows me. All I do is play Path of Exile now. I branched out into other games. and I, the opportunities for going to workshops and stuff, going to the live stream events, Yubi's hella cool for doing that stuff. I mean, I'll give it up. Like, I'll absolutely give it up. Regardless of how I feel about current implementation, current state of the game, rather, how it's going competitively, like what the quality of games are. I met a lot of people through this game. I'm still in that whole sphere of the game. I'm an admin for Glory, so I'm basically like bound there for life now, and I can't get away. Help. The impact, it's pretty big. I mean, it's borderline like shit you could put on a resume if you really wanted to. It's pretty funny, but yeah, I met a lot of cool people through the game. I'm basically like, really close friend to one of the developers. Shout out to Nuke. He's the homie.
I hear nothing but good things about him, by the way.
He's good. He's pretty good. Except he sucks at skateboarding. He's trash. But I love him, dude. So yeah, I mean, it's had pretty sizable impact on my life. It's influenced a lot of how I feel about like trash talk, like we were just talking about, and all things. And been a part of growing up. Played for like 21 to 23 years old. It's pretty neat.
Good stuff, man. All right, well, brother, I know that you have streamed this in the past, and is that something that you might be considering going forward?
If spectator mode takes off, or if some like huge competitive thing takes off, and I get super interested, you might find me back.
Okay.
But probably you'll see.
We'll see. All right, I get you. We'll take a we'll wait and see approach. Okay, well, guys, thank you so much to my guests and to all of you that are watching or listening to this live or through the Twitch VOD or on YouTube a week from now, which is now if you're actually listening to it on YouTube. Sorry, you're a week late. Watch us live here every Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific, right here at twitch.tv/Norgoz. And of course, next week we're going to be talking about being soft versus hard. Fainting, guys, fainting. Get your head out of the gutter. And of course, we're going to be talking about standard versus reflex guard. And we're going to be talking about some other interesting topics, and we will be taking some audience questions next week as well if we get around to it. We're going to be definitely talking a lot about the Hammer Hero, what comes out. The Warriors Den comes out on Thursday. It's the big Hammer Hero reveal. I personally predict that he's going to be a mixture between Raider and Highlander, but with a twist. We'll see what happens with that. And of course, guys, we typically will raid and host someone from the cast. Fatal Lenin are not currently planning on streaming, and Daddy Law is not going to be doing streaming after this. It's actually really late for him. He is the Iron Man motherfucker, and he
probably not going to sleep.
He's probably not gonna. He's probably gonna do another 24 fucking hour stream. I'm not sorry to put that idea in somebody's head. I'm sorry about that, Daddy.
Don't tempt me, please. Please.
He fucking this guy. He does like 100. He does like 172 24-hour streams a week. It's fucking ridiculous. This guy's an Iron Man.
I did 2 24 hours within 8 days 2 weeks ago.
Oh my god. I've done 1 24-hour, and I think I got to 20 hours, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm done. So anyway, moving forward, guys, we're gonna be rating and hosting. I think he should still be live. We're gonna be rating and hosting Mr. Kyle, previous guest on the show. Really, really good entertainer, and he's the most toxic Tiandi that I know. Very fun guy. So guys, I'm gonna throw the end slide up here. Thank you guys again to my guests. Thank you for watching. We will be saying hi to Mr. Kyle shortly. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys. Good night.
Cheers.
See you, everyone.
Laters.
There we go. By the way, remind me that Elgato's Stream Deck does not work properly. He's still on. All right, guys, go say hi to Mr. Kyle. Let him know that the Warcry supports him. I appreciate you guys. Have a great night. Thank you so much.